What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and today we're going to be discussing the recent 250K card marking allegations. The way we're going to do this today, I'm going to be live streaming with various guests who can come on, give their opinions. If you're someone that wants to talk about this, by all means, hit me up. And we have a Twitter Spaces going just to put the audio out there on Twitter so people know this is going on. We are looking for guests here on the YouTube platform. It says 0 viewers. Is this live? Is this live? That's a very good question. I don't believe. Is this live? Testing. Can you guys hear me? People in the chat. Let's see. Is this doesn't look like it's working. Hold on. Hold on here. Yeah, I don't think it's worked. One sec. Oh, okay, unlisted.
What?
See here. Might go live in a sec. Thomas says he's fixing. And broadcast. Add him as a speaker. Okay, here we go. I see people in the chat. I assume that we are live. If you guys can hear me, respond in the chat. I see a lot of first. I see a lot of spicy. Okay, we're here. We're live. The people are flooding in. If you are listening to this live, we are going to be doing a discussion today. People can call in and talk about their thoughts on this, although it's going to be approved guests only, and it's going to be done with video here on YouTube. And we're going to use Twitter Spaces to kind of get people over into the conversation. So with that, let's introduce our first guest here today for the discussions. Tom Dwan joining the Doug Polk Poker channel. Man, times change.
What's up, buddy? I thought you were going to say breaking news or whatever. Isn't that your thing?
It is actually kind of my thing, but for this one specifically, I don't know. Do we have breaking news? I feel like we're going to talk about some news that already broke. Did you freeze? In which case, the news is broken, but in a different kind of broken. Are you back?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You're good.
Some technical difficulties.
Always are. There always are. Okay, so let's get things going then. I saw you took to Twitter the other day or last night, I think, and you were tweeting your thoughts about the whole thing. Kind of where are you at right now? What are your thoughts on the situation that you saw?
So some people compared this to Bryn or Ali or people like that. To me, I think they're way different. From what I know of, there's accusations around those kind of people online. I don't really know if they're true or not. I don't think there's many accusations that if me and you and them played tomorrow, it wouldn't be a pretty fair game. Did you lose me again?
Slightly, but you're back. Slight Wi-Fi issues.
Right. So to me, what matters the most is going forward, is the game going to be fair? Right? And if something has happened in the past, obviously I don't think that's cool. I wouldn't be in a rush to play with anyone that's ever done that. I don't think it's a big deal if they all get barred. But if there's accusations someone did something online in the past or ghosting or whatever, as opposed to actively looking like they might be marking cards, like, that's pretty fucking crazy. And I think...
Also,
go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I thought you'd finish. Basically, I think, like, it does matter, you know, you talk about past versus future, right? As we talk about the discussion and the framework for it. There is a question of what should happen in the event if he was cheating, or if we think he's cheating, or did he cheat? And then there's the question of what happens moving forward. And those are kind of separate topics, right?
Sure. But I think to use one hand that we were both around, I don't think there's any accusations around you or I on game integrity stuff, right? We may not always see eye to eye on a bunch of issues. But even you, when you saw a guy's cards in $1 million buy-in, you just never want people to think that, right? Of course, the right thing to do is to try to speak up and say something, right? I'm the same. If I'm playing some big Chinese game and some dude's drunk and I get to see his hand or see what, you know, like, I'm going to try to do the right thing, try to say it, try to, you know, and it's insane to me that, like, I would never be trying to make it seem like I'm seeing someone's card so I can get reads on them later or some shit like that. That's effectively the same as making it seem like you're marking cards if you're
Well, yeah.
somehow not.
When you talk about game integrity with that, I did think it was interesting. You said, I'm not going to try and get reads off of Doug here because like I want them to feel like it's fair, or want Wesley to feel like it's fair, or the game to feel like it's fair. And I do appreciate that because it was an incredibly awkward position to get put in, by the way. Like I tried to help him out. I'm like, dude, I can see your hands. And then like the pot is about to be $3 million. I'm sitting there like, oh my fucking God, what? I didn't even sign up for this. I didn't even say, let me get a sweat. I was like, hey, I saw your hand. Ridiculous.
And I think I either texted you this or said it or something, but to be clear, I do think there was a small read I had on you, but the biggest read was him never acknowledging that, which was weird, right? Like he never, he never thought about, wait a second, did someone, do I do this different? Should I still value bet my aces? What do I do with kings now? Like he just was like, oh yeah, don't worry about that. And to me that, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You got it. Finish.
Well, yeah, to me that strongly downweights. I mean, kings, it almost zeroes out. Aces, it strongly downweights. He could have a cheeseburger. He could have hit an 8 on the flop, sure. But most other hands, he would have thought it through,
Yeah, definitely. I think like what was so tilting for me was I just wanted him to acknowledge that I saw his cards. And rather than do that, he's like, hey, you can sweat. And I'm like, I know what you have. And then I'm like, look at him like, yep, still there or whatever. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, anyway, we're getting into the, that was an amazing hand, by the way. But going back onto this one, talking about game integrity. I mean, in my mind, there's only 3 things that can be happening, right? Either 1, he's cheating. 2, he's not cheating, but he's creating an aura that he's cheating in order to throw people off their game, get in their heads, and basically you can't prove he's cheating because he's not, but he's using that as a tactic to, make people uncomfortable and get them off their game. Or 3, he's just a really weird dude, and they're kind of all in play at the moment, right? Like I don't know, what do you think about that? Do you think there's some other possible option there, or what do you think?
So my info's old. I haven't dug into it super recent, but supposedly there's a lot of other accusations. But regardless, the reason I brought up that hand is I think game integrity should be paramount. I think if there was something with Triton game integrity, I would want you or whoever else to give me shit or give Paul or Richard shit and us try to deal with it, right? If there was something at Lodge, something at World Series, something wherever, I think that should always come first. Right. And it's not to say you're always going to get things perfect. There's always going to be small issues, but the players shouldn't get to try to make people question the game integrity. Right. Yeah, so and that's not to say I don't think you did anything wrong at Hustler. Wesley accidentally lifted up his cards. That's on him. But for example, if you're running a stream and someone's intentionally looking at cards, you should say something. And I think you did nothing wrong at all there, but there was some Hustler stream where someone was intentionally looking at cards. Like, yeah, that's a problem, right? Yeah, and whatever whatever happened in this 250, and I haven't delved into it super deep, the guy was not trying to make people feel comfortable. The game was on the level, and so that to me, that's ground for barring someone going forward, regardless.
Yeah, so that's definitely reasonable. I think like if we just want to make a blanket statement here of, whether you're cheating or not cheating, if you're putting on a show that makes people think you're cheating or will make people suspicious of cheating, we can probably ban you for that, right? And we're not talking about like in this tournament. We're talking about moving forward. Do you enjoy that? Did you like that? Right. Yeah. So anyway, but like if it's because there's a difference of like this tournament and then the future. I think like this tournament wraps up. You kind of need physical proof to withhold money, to kick him out of the tournament, to confiscate chips, all that kind of stuff. You need legitimate, innocent until proven guilty type proof to kick out of an event.
Well, but on that note, Nevada Gaming is probably the preeminent gaming body in the world. This was one of the biggest ever buy-in poker tournaments in the world. I hope Nevada Gaming oversees this. I don't 100% trust the World Series here. I'm getting closer to 100% if you start involving Caesars Corporate, Caesars Interactive, etc. Getting real close to 100% if Nevada Gaming starts overseeing stuff. That should happen.
Why do you not trust the World Series of Poker here?
No comment. We can text after. But I'm not saying they'll be wrong. But okay. But I just wouldn't 100%. Look at what happened with Hustler, right? There were accusations, whatever happened or didn't. I'm not saying their investigation was perfect, but one of the first things they did was talk to you, talk to Joey, talk to me. We definitely don't all always see eye to eye, right? They tried to say, whoever the hell that's reasonably independent wants to come look, come look. Here you have literally maybe the #1 trusted gaming body in the world. Okay, let's have them look.
Well, so it's okay. So there's some difficulty with that too, right? Because I think for the gaming body, I'm sure they've seen all kinds of stuff, right? The Las Vegas has been a center for cheaters for decades. I'm sure they have great tactics to determine what's happening. And yeah, actually, I guess like the more you think about it, like people probably try to cheat at table games, things like that. They've probably caught every trick in the book when it comes to marking cards and getting to the bottom of things. But I guess like kind of what you're alluding to, and this is a great topic, is when it comes to operator integrity, there's a real mismatch of incentives. And this is something that I've talked to a bunch of people about, and there can't really seem to be a good solution. As a business guy, I try and align incentives with people. If we all have the same incentive, then we'll usually get to the right destination, or at least we'll try to get there together. The problem with operators and catching cheating, and this is not to say that I think Hustler or World Series of Poker or anyone has done a bad job of their investigations, although I don't think Stone's ever caught Mike Postle, so I digress. As an operator, you basically are not incentivized to catch the person, because if you catch the person, you put at risk your gaming license. So there's a real tough crossroad there, which is if they find evidence of cheating, then they can only really hurt themselves by coming forward and announcing it. So is there some kind of solution here that can mitigate this problem, or is this just going to be the way that things go down when we talk about operators looking for cheating?
Well, I mean, Nevada Gaming is not going to be the preeminent body if that is the situation for the next 10 years, 20 years. That's just not the right answer. And if World Series catches cheating and gets shit for it, I'll be the first person to go out and try to defend the series. I think you would too. Right? Just like Hustler, one of the things I really liked about Hustler was they told me, and I think you, a bunch of the facts that didn't support the case that nothing happened. Right? That made me trust them. Does that mean their investigation was 100% perfect? I don't know. Does that mean, whatever. That's not super important to me. What's important to me is there was a pretty reasonable investigation. And I hope that happens here. We'll see if it does.
And they found something that wasn't. Sorry, breaking up.
I think it cut out, but whatever. I don't want to take up too much time anyway. But yeah, I mean, I just think it should be an outside group that or a reasonably unbiased body that looks at it.
Yeah, I guess one last thing on that topic is Hustler did find that Brian stole money off the table, right? And they went public with that. So you have to imagine that they were at least trying to do due diligence there and try and get to the bottom of game integrity. It's important for them. They obviously have a big show. Of course, integrity is important for the World Series of Poker. I'm not accusing people at World Series that they wouldn't do the same, but it is interesting when you think about incentives.
I'll share one story with the series before, which is I forget what it was, but something weird happened, and I asked them to save the cards. And then there was some excuse. And this is like 10 years ago, and there's a bunch of random. There was also a tournament when I had bracelet bets and there were like 15 people left or 13 people left. And the dealer was dealing the cards a little high. And I remember complaining and they just said, no, the hand's going to play anyway. And then because it was me and I'm a pretty known poker player, the floor came over and they dealt a new hand, right? Or dealt new cards or whatever. But a lot of times this kind of shit can get swept under the rug. And I don't think that means that the series is bad or anything like that. But my point is this one's a bit egregious. It should get looked at. Whatever happens, whatever comes out, even if something did happen and they miss it or something didn't happen or whatever, it should just get looked at by a pretty unbiased body or two.
Yeah, definitely a reasonable take there. As for moving forward, I know you want to run here in a second, but as for moving forward, so I think you were pretty clear on this, that you think that he should be banned for this behavior.
I mean, put it this way. If he showed up to Triton tomorrow, I think we would ban him. If not, I'd be screaming bloody murder that he should be banned. I would suggest the same from the lodge. That's not to say if he wanted to sit down and talk and explain his side and say, here's whatever happened, I'll make sure I don't do anything wrong, whatever. Sure, you can always talk. What's the problem? Right? But I think there's enough to be talked, to ban him unless it's talked about. Like, looks pretty bad.
Totally agree. Are you going to Triton London, by the way?
Yeah. You?
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I'm going.
With Rob, right?
I'm Rob's poker pro.
Oh shit.
Yeah. He plays a couple cash games with me. He's like, oh, let's get this guy out here. talks shit about my game all the time. He's like, "Oh man, these YouTube guys, huh? They don't know what's going on." I'm like, I'm pretty good at poker. I hope.
Well, I'll see you there.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thank you for hopping on. I do appreciate it. All right, guys.
By the way, this is like the most we've ever agreed on something is this last 10 minutes.
Yeah, and even then, I think we're a little different, but we're close. We're very close. We're working our way. One day we'll have full consensus on something.
All right, man. See ya.
All right, dude. See ya. All right, guys. So you are now left back with just me. The way I want to run this today, I want to have people hop on here and talk about things a little bit. In the interim, I can always just pull up some of the clips and talk about them myself. But I would like to have some guests. So if you want to hop on this podcast, we got a few thousand people listening on YouTube. I'm not even sure what we have on Spaces. We can have anyone hop on that is someone that I'm at least vaguely familiar with. You do not have to be my best friend to hop on here. Happy to take all kinds of different opinions and get a variety of stances on this thing. We are using Twitter Spaces as well, but we're mainly going to be just using that so that people can hear the conversation. It's too difficult to get people in on both. Like the technology is not there. But in the interim, while we're waiting for people, I'm going to pull up the video I put up today, and we're going to talk about a few spots, a la a Joe Ingram style investigation. I have to say, guys, I was a little disappointed to see that Joey was not going to lead the charge on 15,000 hours of YouTube investigations. But so we can go ahead and just get rolling here a little bit, talk about some of this stuff while we wait for our next guest. So I think like one of the things that people are really talking about a lot, really locking in on, and I put this in the intro of my video today, is the way that Martin presses into the cards when he folds and what's exactly happening with that. If we look very closely at this video, this is kind of, I think, the best example of the sort of pressure he's putting on the cards. And this is what I think a lot of people viewed as kind of the smoking gun. If you look very closely at the way his thumb presses in, he puts a decent amount of force on that. You can see the corner of his thumb starts to turn white. Basically, he is definitely putting some sizable force onto the cards there. And will that create an indent? The problem with that argument is that if it does put an indent on the cards, the other players are going to be able to see that. So if someone sees him do this and checks that card and there's an indent, he's obviously banned. So my logic is I think it's pretty unlikely that's what's going on here. Of course, this is the interesting clip. Of course, this is what people want to see and talk about. But I do think at the same time, it is incredibly unlikely to me that he's indenting the card there in order to then see what it is later. It just seems a little bit far-fetched. Although I'm definitely interested in seeing if there are some other opinions out there about what kind of techniques could be used. And I guess like for some people, they might think that essentially the fact that we don't have good evidence one way or the other in like what he's doing exactly doesn't mean that we should be not talking about some potential ways that he might be able to cheat or be using this to cheat. Let's see if there is another guest. Okay. Let's talk about a couple of the hands here that I talked about today while we wait for the next person as well. So looking at some of the hands, I think the most interesting part is this from day 2 in the tournament. I talked about this in my video a little bit, but basically Martin gets dealt the ace of spades and then plays a couple of big hands against the ace of spades right after. And it's weird to me because one of them is very suspicious. Basically, he has the knowledge that someone has the ace of spades facing a 3-bet with king 3 suited. Very different than when you have king 3 suited against the ace of spades versus the other one where he makes a crazy bluff. So let's see here 1 second. Really quick here, just make sure. The wonders of the technological age. Let's see who would want to come up here. I'm going to send a couple people just the link to hop on here if they want to. Let's see here. And when they can, they can. Okay. Alrighty. So going back to this hand is really peculiar to me because let's just say for a moment that he knows that Al does actually have the ace of spades. why would you want to call a 3-bet to a very large size with the king 3 suited? Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. We see Al goes for 3-bet to 1.2 million, and he's got king 3 suited against this. If your opponent is cheating, why would you call a $1.2 million 3-bet when you don't really know what's going to happen? You're way behind. You have no playability. There's no stack depth. You're out of position. This is just a kind of crazy one for you to be trying to cheat because you're just so obviously a dog. So I don't really understand this. I would love someone that's coming through the he's cheating, that's going through the he's cheating side of things to come on and kind of explain this one. The other one is wild. The one on the board where it is 858. This goes flop bet, raise, jam. Pretty insane to me that someone could make this move with king queen. Here, having the ace of spades would be incredibly relevant. You would know your opponent does not have an 8, basically, because ace 8 offsuit would not want to make that kind of raise here pre-flop. So yeah, you have both sides of the argument, right? You have both sides of the argument. You have one hand he plays really well, one hand he plays really badly. Which one do we weigh more heavily? It's difficult for us to really know. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just take some questions from the chat here while we wait for our next guest. Who cares if he's marking cards? Apparently, a lot of you guys care, guys. Let's talk about the invisible ink / contact lenses theory I've seen getting spitballed around. I guess if there's anything that's going to be possible, that one does make a little bit of sense to me, because you wouldn't be able to tell that he's running the contacts, and then there'd be invisible ink. But then still, he would have to be putting it on his fingers and putting it on the cards. I think it would be pretty easy for the World Series to investigate if he has some kind of strange substance on him, if he has something in his pockets, if he has something he's putting on the cards. Is there some kind of moisture on them? It would be pretty easy for them to determine if there was any kind of liquid on those cards. So this doesn't seem very likely to me that that's what's going on. But that does seem like the most plausible one. Another one, and we talked about this a bit too, is what did he just have someone behind players looking at the cards, right? I mean, this rail is pretty rowdy. We've got some people really close here. Like look at the rail compared to this hand. We got some players that are super close. Yeah. All right. Hop on. I think we might have a guest coming up here. We'll talk with no camera. If you don't have a camera, that's fine too, guys. We can just join the link. Can do no camera. Okay. I'm gonna get some more opinions here shortly. I'm just killing a little bit of time before we got our next guest. Got a couple potential great ones. Just trying to bridge the gap a little bit here. So let's say this. What do you guys think actually in the chat? Let's start off with, let's go with this. Do you guys think cheating or no cheating? Let me get a sense of the audience, because I've talked with different people. I've seen both sides of the fence from poker pros around the community, but I actually have not gotten an overall idea of cheating versus non-cheating. So in the chat, 1, if you're cheating, 2, if you're not, let me know what you think, and we'll get a little bit of perspective. Okay, so we're gonna have, I think Dan Smith joining in 5 minutes through audio. So stay tuned. Definitely a pivotal character in the entire saga. Played with him for multiple days. We'll have some good firsthand account. Obviously, someone that I respect a lot in poker. So definitely would be great to have Dan on and get his opinion. We got a lot of 1s in the chat. We have a lot of cheating, but we do have a good chunk of 2s. So kind of interesting. Oh, we're actually going to be joined here by Brent Hanks. Brent Hanks is joining, looks like. Yes, I think so. Let's see here. Just needs audio. And then we'll get Brent's opinion on what is going on here. Bear with me, guys, while we get this rolling. I think this will be good once we have people hopping in. Nope, in and out. Don't think it is going to work. Mic isn't working. Okay. Anyway, going back to this, talking about the rail. It is kind of weird with this rail, and this is something for players to be aware of when you're looking at or when you're playing deep in tournaments. Sometimes the rail can get pretty close on this secondary table. So for those of you who don't know, there are 4 tables in the WSOP main feature table area. There is a feature table, the mothership table. Then there's a secondary feature table, which does have cards, which is this one. And then there are two side tables that are there for different shots. Here we go. I think actually Brent is joining us now. Brent, you're here. We're live. Welcome.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry, I had a little technical difficulties.
No sweat, no sweat. We're trying to do it a little differently here, so it might be confusing with the link and the spaces and everything. But thank you for hopping on.
Sure. Looks like you're really getting to the bottom of it.
I guess. I mean, I'm trying to just kind of go through what I saw and get some feedback from the community. But really, I think that the point of this is to get some people on who have their own takes about it and what they think happened. And I guess let's just start off with, what do you think? Cheating, no cheating, your take? What are your thoughts?
It's hard to have. I'm not 100% either way. Obviously, it's impossible to be there. From what I saw throughout the course of day 2 on the broadcast, and then obviously Jeff and I, we called the entire final table. I didn't see anything that indicated cheating. I read Chance's post that he just put out there, not too long ago. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read it. And I'm sort of on that page. I think he was trying to look like he was up to no good, sort of intimidate players, make them uncomfortable. And that seemed to me that was the ploy. Just think about the optics, right? You've got, I mean, at this rate, probably millions of people have seen clips, whatever it was, they're onto this. It's a national news story. Cameras are running. You've got all of WSOP looking down, probably more than that. If you really think this guy is blatantly marking cards with his fingernails or using some magical substance on the cards that his contact lenses can pick up only, it seems unrealistic. And it really doesn't. I don't think that was the case.
I guess the counter argument to that would be that a lot of times when people cheat in various ways, they do so in a quite obvious manner. And, we think about maybe some other potential cheatings. Okay, well, certainly. So for example, Postle, I think we can all kind of be on the same page that almost 100% for sure Postle was cheating. Let's just say 100% sure Postle was cheating. That's like the slam dunk case, right? He did that in a very, very obvious way. So I think there's a reasonable counter argument to that, which is, hey, yeah, you'd think you wouldn't do it in such a stupid manner, but people have. So can we really rule it out because of that?
Yeah, and that's fair. I would also say, Postle doesn't strike me as the most intelligent guy, whereas Martin, I think, is very smart. And that could be a terrible argument, but yeah, I see what you're saying, and it certainly could be the case. And again, I don't think it's possible to have 100% definitive proof here, unless the WSOP finds something that's groundbreaking. And I heard your points earlier that maybe we'll never be aware of that. That's what Matt Berkey was saying as well. But my personal opinion is that no, he wasn't cheating, and yes, he was doing everything he could to make everyone at the table uncomfortable, and that was intentional.
That seems to be the case. I do think that a strategy where you're trying to make people think you might be cheating is just kind of over the line regardless. So I think like it would be pretty within the rules for World Series to decide to ban him moving forward, unless maybe he says like, look, like I didn't realize how bad this was for me. I'm not going to be doing this again. Maybe that'd be fine. I don't know. What do you think? Should they continue to allow Martin to play in some of these events in the future, or do you think like the collective voice of what seems to be a large chunk of the high stakes community should kind of set the tone for this?
I'm curious to see what they decide upon. Obviously, I know he's in the 3K right now. David Baker was just tweeting about that from his account, saying that the floor actually told him he cannot cover his cards with his hands, and he's at the same table with Martin.
I saw that tweet, yeah.
He did defend the floor and say, everyone is sort of on edge. And I think that's where it gets difficult and where the WSP will have a decision to make. Not only is it affecting the players, but it's now the staff and the crew are seemingly affected. So I personally believe it's going to be up to Martin. If he changes his ways, has a reasonable conversation with those that be at the World Series, and then abides by it, agrees and actually demonstrates that he can behave in a reasonable manner. Maybe you start with, we're beyond warnings, I think, at this point. Maybe you start with penalties. You're going to miss an orbit, something like that. You're going to miss a level. whatever they do, decide. And then after that, you move into a ban. A ban to me seems a little excessive if he has not been properly warned or penalized prior to that. But that's easier for me to say than a lot of these high roller guys who have played with him over the course of the last few years, right? They've got a lot of different experiences with him.
Yeah, that's certainly true. The World Series doesn't seem to issue bans too lightly, right? Like, as far as I know, Ali Amsurovich and Jake Schindler are still playing World Series of Poker events, right? So it seems like if we're not even going to ban people that we know cheated in other events, then are we going to be banning people for maybe cheating that might have happened? It's kind of hard to say. Brent, we actually are just joined here by Dan Smith. I want to get him on. I do appreciate you hopping on the talk with us. Thank you for taking the time, but I want to throw it over to Dan if that's cool.
You got it. Looking forward to hearing from Dan. Thanks, Doug.
Appreciate it. All righty. Dan, looking colorful today, man. Got a little colorful shirt.
There's
some music. Strawberries? Nice.
Yeah, I'm actually about to go to the bank to cash the check from the tournament. Maybe a little irony there.
Okay. All righty. Nice. A little double up drive donation maybe incoming.
I think so.
All right. So obviously you were at the table with Martin for at least a couple of the days. You were, and by the way, I think you did a good job of kind of trying to protect the table. Even though you took shit from people like Ivy with some of the short comment, or
he definitely didn't mean it that way, and it was funny. I have a good relationship with Ivy.
I thought it was very funny, and I thought your response was good too. But I do like that you were proactively trying to protect players, bring attention to it, be on top of it with the floor. I think in a little bit of a way, you were kind of like the integrity council of the table, if you will. Did you feel like that at the table with him?
Yeah, I kind of just thought something needed to be done, and I've never had this feeling before that a game wasn't on the up and up. And for the record, the final table felt pretty straight up. He was playing tight and straightforward. He was just playing every hand, final two tables, and Artur wasn't protecting his cards. And I could also imagine him being a kind of guy who might be sloppy about looking at it if somebody's standing behind him. It was just every hand. There was the blind versus blind hand where he shoves the river on the 4 spades or whatever suit it was.
4 hearts, yeah, 4 hearts, yeah.
I did.
Sorry, I was gonna say that hand made a little bit of sense to me though. I think that it was a fairly reasonable play.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's going against this one guy again and again. It's just another example of him ravaging this one dude.
Yeah, the 4-bet on the flop one is the crazy one, right?
Yeah. I have a question for you. So I don't know what it's like to own a card room or anything. I asked for a deck of cards, and I was like, I would like to look into them, and they said no.
Yeah, you can't give out decks of cards.
Even to me.
Oh, are you big time now? You get decks of cards?
I think I should get a deck of cards. Why can't you?
Okay, so if you start handing out decks of cards that are currently, so there's 2 kinds of decks, right? There's in play, and then there's
take them fucking out of circulation for sure.
Okay, but the type of deck matters. And so if I give you a deck and I have 8,000 of those decks, you can now literally have an ace up your sleeve of the decks that are being played with, right? So you can have people that can copy these decks, they can manipulate these decks, they can learn the deck. They could do a thing like memorize the way the deck looks. So basically it's like an integrity. It's a game integrity issue. You don't give out decks in circulation. You give out decks that are expired or out of circulation as the standard.
Well, I want to take it out of circulation.
But I'm saying, so that
they're duplicate decks.
Duplicate decks. Yeah. So when you order decks, I don't know how many decks the World Series of Poker orders at once. My guess, not a small number, right? It's oh yeah, guys, let's just take these 50,000 decks out because Dan wants to look at it on Thursday.
Well, there's probably only so many RFID decks.
Oh, RFID. So that's a good point. Sorry, that's a good point. But that would be a production side issue, right?
Sure, I would love to have somebody else who's reputable to ensure or I think Maury. I would love if it was Maury was hey, he is looking into it. I am concerned that the WSOP is not incentivized to have a resolution, you know? Like
Yeah.
there was an example some number of years ago where a guy was like definitively cheating in the 10K heads up, and like it's just known that and
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I remember that tournament. Yeah, yeah. It was like an older guy, had a lot of hair. Was like he would get dealt cards and he would just shuffle and play with them for a very long time. I remember. I think towards the end of day one, people were very very suspect that he was cheating in the tournament.
like nothing ever happened with that to my knowledge.
Have we seen that guy play any more events since then?
I'm gonna guess no, but I'm not sure.
Well, wouldn't it be kind of hard to say that we know nothing happened then? I mean, I can't. I remember that. I know who you're talking about. I
Nothing
forget the guy's
happened
name.
as in like some people like so he won a few matches, so like say he stole like 100K in equity. Those players
Right.
didn't get refunded.
Right. So okay, so let's ask about this then. So in my mind, there's two different things here, which is should he get banned from in the tournament and should he get banned moving forward? And I think to ban someone from in a tournament and confiscate money, you have to have just undeniable proof.
Sure,
you're taking
I would
someone's
love
money.
if they held his money for say a week while I did an investigation.
Okay. So yeah, okay. I guess I could get on board with that. But I would feel like as an operator, I'm just not going to hold somebody's money unless, man, I don't know. What's the legality of that? If you don't have proof someone's cheating and you're holding their money, isn't there some like, what kind of precedent? I don't know. Do you see why I might? I'm hesitant.
I think if like a handful of the most reputable people in poker over like a very long time who've never done such a thing, you could make a one-off exception. Again, I don't know the legality of it. But like taking a moment to like reflect on it and before proceeding seems kind of obvious to me.
Okay.
Oh,
That's
and
reasonable.
so you were talking about like the Ace of Spades thing. I think I tweeted this. If you just see the Ace of Spades, you might just think like if he raises so big, he probably doesn't have aces. So given that he is an unpaired hand, maybe if the board like any board without an ace, king, or queen, you just lead for a quarter pot, you know?
Does he do weird leads like that? Have we seen that from him anywhere?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
I mean, he took back the lead when the 4 paired, which isn't like completely ridiculous, but he kind of was just doing whatever he wanted whenever he wanted.
The other side of this though is if I have king 3 of spades out of position and I see my opponent for sure has the ace of spades, that's basically the worst possible card they can have, right?
Totally. And even if it's like, okay, he's made so many chips, this is just going to like throw off the scent.
Okay. So
But he might just think that he could just win the pot when the board comes out scary. Like, I don't think that's like that unreasonable.
unless Al has aces or like he pairs his kicker. It's a scary situation to try and do that, to be honest with you. It's a very scary situation to try and pull that maneuver.
I do like how when I suggested to Al that he cover up his cards, he just responded by saying if somebody stands up and looks at him, we'll slap them in the face.
Yeah, that's pretty LOL. I don't think he was too worried about what was happening with Martin. What do you think as a player in the event? Because I've heard different things from different players. I obviously don't want to say anyone's names because I've asked a lot of the players about their thoughts. I do see some mixed stuff from people about how over the line they thought this was. Do you think that there is a consensus amongst players like in the high rollers as a group, or do you think there's a smaller consensus, or like what's like the general feeling of the players in this tournament?
100% of the players in the tournament want him out.
That you've spoken to?
I would bet that literally every player in the tournament.
I don't know if that's true, man. It would be interesting to get some other players on here, but
if you find me a super high roller regular who thinks he should be in the tournaments, I would be very surprised.
Okay, so you mean of like the good players?
No, of everyone. Everyone
okay.
hates him. Like a lot of these guys, like also, okay, let's just say nothing nefarious is going on. You play one tournament a year. This guy just completely ruins your experience. I wouldn't be surprised if like a bunch less people play the tournament next year because of this.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely fair. I also like his. If the shtick is to make people think you might be cheating, that's definitely over the line anyway. I guess it's just difficult for the operator to decide like what's the point where we actually ban people, and then obviously they're also incentivized people to play, of course, and then also they're incentivized to not have liability in these spots. So it's kind of difficult, right? Because the incentives of the player pool are so different than the incentives of the operator, and how do you kind of bridge that gap to fix that incentive structure?
I kind of don't feel a need to like come up where the line is, because this is just so far past it that like it doesn't even matter. And there may be like a close situation in the future, but like who cares? Or like maybe no one ever gets banned ever again.
Okay, that's fair. Do you think he's cheating, or do you think he's just fucking around? People seem really sure he's cheating on Twitter. I'm sure you've seen the.
I don't have like. I think being super confident either way is pretty challenging. I will just say there was like a couple hour stretch with 2 tables to go that felt very different than any time I've played poker before, and it just like also it could have just been like I fell for some of the tactics or whatever, and like maybe he had a live read with the just like it felt fishy, but like I don't know either way,
Yeah, but you were there, right? So your perspective would be a little different than for people that weren't. Like you were playing in the tournament. I mean,
yeah, I'm just saying I think it would be very hard for me to be sure one way or the other. I think like
right.
both possibilities are there. I will say, as like a very seasoned veteran of playing high stakes poker, it was very uncomfortable and it definitely affected me. Even like I was just like a little bit rattled and don't think I was playing my absolute best at that point, which is unfortunate because it's like one of the highest stakes situations I'll ever be in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough when the stakes are that high too. Like if there's I've definitely felt that where I'm playing someone and you're thinking, is there a % chance I'm getting cheated? And then when that sets in, then you get this like you want to be conservative, right? Because like you don't want to be making some crazy play or some aggressive play in a spot where, oh, if this guy knows what I have, I'm toast, right?
I thought about 5-betting all in on the bubble with the suited ace, and then I'm like, oh my god, what if he just 4-bet calls like ace-8 for like the biggest pot of the tournament, and it's just like you just get wrecked if that once that thought's in your head, you just like can't win.
Yeah, you're toast. And that's something that I think people don't really understand with cheating, because when people look at cheating, they're like, oh, you cheat or didn't cheat. But as a poker pro, you have to assess the chance you're getting cheated. And when that chance becomes higher, you can't play poker, right? Like that's one of the reasons why I've never played like private games, home games, that kind of stuff. I'm sure there are great ones around the country that people can play in. But one of the reasons I never took any of those invites is because like I don't want to be in a situation where I'm worried there's a small % chance of getting cheated, because if you do get cheated, then you get completely buried.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And just I guess concerns with this guy in big tournaments have been going on for many years. Like I think actually Leon stopped allowing him to play World Series Europe because everyone said they weren't playing if Martin's playing.
Oh, that's interesting. He's banned from Kings?
And I think it could just be an optics thing or whatever. But to my knowledge, I'm not going to say he's banned. I think it was players were told he wouldn't play the World Series Europe tournaments.
Interesting.
And just coincidentally, he has 2 major wins there.
Okay. So you're saying what?
I'm not saying
what a coincidence.
Anything.
You're saying what a coincidence?
Unbelievable coincidence that this.
That is interesting. Maybe it's like a home court advantage situation. You get a few points at home, right?
I'm not going to make a joke here because it's very serious, and I'm not going to say what I am saying.
Okay.
But I think I just did,
I understand what you're saying.
I don't know how lawsuits work. I'm probably in the clear, but just...
Well, I'm going to be... Okay, so the thing about the lawsuits, I've looked into this many times, believe it or not. But basically, in order to lose a case for defamation, you have to be way, 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 way over the line. but you also have to be, it has to be provably false that what you're saying is true and that you knew it's not true. So it's just really difficult. Now you can get sued anytime, right? Like this is America. Anyone can sue anyone. But it's true.
This is
right?
America.
It is. It's true. Anyone can sue anyone. But it's incredibly hard to win defamation cases.
Him
What are
winning
you
big
doing?
tournaments.
What are you doing
Why
right
am
now?
I pacing?
What are you? I'm just interested. There's some nice trees. We got a little music in the background.
I am at Tivoli Village in Las Vegas. I'm about to go to Lexington Bank to deposit this money, but I figured I would hop in.
Yeah. How do you like Lexicon Bank, by the way? I saw that while I was in Vegas. I'm considering getting another bank option.
They're great.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, I do appreciate you hopping on. Any last things you want to say here to kind of maybe clear up some things you think maybe you didn't get across earlier, or any last thoughts?
I will just reiterate that there have been fears about him in many tournaments, in many situations. World Series Europe, like the fact that he's banned or was told not to play or whatever from Kings, in the Super High Roller Bowl, there was this situation where, like, in the middle of a hand, I forget if it was him or Leon actually, but like the guy says Justin hasn't put his cards on the RFID at this hand mid-hand. And maybe it could again be the thing where it's like, I'm going to get in this guy's head and make him think I'm cheating. But like, this isn't like a one-off situation. There's been run-ins with this guy for many years.
Are you talking about the Super High Roller Bowl from 2017?
I think so.
Yeah, because I played that tournament. I remember that tournament, by the way. He was hanging out with Leon a lot and always kind of wandering around with him, and people were very suspicious that he was looking at people's cards over their shoulders. I think you were in that tournament.
I think I was in that tournament, but I bluffed it off before I had the opportunity to possibly get cheated.
Okay, nice. Nice. So what you're saying is you fully realized your equity.
Precisely.
Very nicely done. Advanced anti-cheating techniques with Dan Smith.
I've been around a long time.
Well, actually, one last comment here that someone made that I think is kind of a good one. So there's a discussion about like, is Martin autistic, and is he kind of on the spectrum, and is that playing into this? And I think generally speaking, people don't agree with that take, but there are a number of people talking about that. What are your thoughts on that as a plausible explanation? He's obviously a bit weird, no?
He is obviously a bit weird. I don't know what to say beyond that.
Okay.
But one other thing that I don't know if did you see the bit about how like the cards were sticking to his fingers a bit?
Yeah. So what was going on with that? I saw a little bit of.
There were a couple of times when I was out of the hand when like his cards would raise, and I don't know, maybe his hands were just sweaty, but it seems like there's a possibility that he was putting something sticky, or I don't know, but he would like touch the cards, put them on the reader, and they would just like come up as he was with his hand as he was moving it. It's something I had never seen before. I also like, there are other guys on the tour who are like notoriously have sweaty hands, and that's something I've never seen that I think should get investigated. That like the card sticking to his fingers is just very odd and something I've never seen before. So we're already in this.
You could run some tests on that pretty easily, right? You could.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wouldn't know what you would put on your hand. And he was like doing this thing, where I'm bad with the camera, but he was like rubbing his arm in the middle of hands and like playing with his nose if there was snot or something. And
Not
again,
great.
it could just be, I'm going to make people as uncomfortable as possible. But the fact that like the cards were sticking to his fingers in a weird way is something that I would love to see investigated. And I guess if it was like Maury doing the investigation, I would feel like great about it.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely would be great to have Maury actively involved here, because he's the guy, right, in poker when it comes to shows and stuff. And whenever as someone that runs a stream, whenever I have questions or want advice, I go to Maury, right, because you want to take things seriously, you want to do them the right way. And I think he's the most committed to game. I mean, he plays a lot of poker too. Like Maury's also a poker player, right?
Yeah.
And he understands the dynamic of you have a show, but also you need to make sure that game integrity is number one.
Totally.
Alrighty, well, thank you for weighing in with your opinions, and we do appreciate the. Oh, before you go, I gotta ask at least once here. So, is this resolved with Jason Kuhn, the Triton thing? When you guys had a little dispute, I saw you guys tweet about it afterwards a little bit. Seems like things are good now.
Things are good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't like seeing you guys fight. It's like seeing your mom and dad fight. Guys, don't fight in front of me.
I didn't like it either, and hopefully it never happens again.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day at the bank to stop by. And how do you do the 50K, by the way?
I got 25th or someplace not quite in the money, but it's just such a fun tournament. It's awesome.
Yeah, I knew that. That's why you're at the bank. Anyway, thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for the needle. Bye-bye.
I'll see you. All right, guys. Very nice of Dan Smith to tune in. I think we actually have another guest coming up here shortly. Hopefully, we're going to have Chris Brewer. He said he'll hop in, and hopefully he will be able to stop by. He actually won this tournament, so we'll get some more inside scoop on what it was like playing this tournament from the eventual winner. I think that would be a nice perspective to have. I think he only played with him on the final day, if I'm not mistaken, so maybe he's not going to be there for kind of the day that was a little more in question, but at bare minimum, we will have some opinions about his experience on that final day. And maybe we'll also get some insight into what it was like playing with him. Does he feel like this player shouldn't be allowed in future tournaments? I think Chris Brewer is, he's a newer face in the high stakes poker scene, but seems to be a very good player. And you guys probably remember him from my celebration when I hit that queen on the river and did a couple laps around the World Series of Poker feature table. In the interim, while we wait for Chris Brewer to hop on here, if you guys want to join the conversation, we're only taking approved guests because we're going to give you a camera. And frankly, I don't trust most of you. So if you are an approved guest, you can tweet at Doug Polk Poker or at Doug Polk Vids on Twitter. And I will send the link out to a couple guests maybe that I think would be people that could add to the discussion. Of course, we're going to put an emphasis more on high roller tournament regulars or people that are active in the poker content community. If you have a take, if you were in the tournament, if you think that we need to change some protocols moving forward, or if maybe you're on the operator side. One of the interesting things about this subject for me is I have a poker room. So obviously we want to do what's right in our tournaments. Of course, we're not having too many tournaments with $5 million up top. I don't think we will ever have a tournament like that. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taking things seriously regardless of the stakes. Also, I want to give a couple quick shout outs here in the chat before we get going into with our next guest. We have some donations being made. Paul Taskalis, appreciate the $20 donation. I mentioned the autistic thing to Dan. Mr. Dr. Batman, $20. There's a fine line between etiquette violations and rule violations. I do agree those two things should be handled quite differently. And hey, Doug, I want to talk about King Green Hand. I have sought argument. Armin, appreciate $20 donation, but I cannot bring you up here to discuss things as I'm not sure who you are, and I just can't give people cameras that I don't know who they are. Okay, so just kind of recap here. So far, we've had Tom Dwan stop by and talk about his thoughts on what happened. He thinks pretty clearly that Martin should not be allowed in future tournaments, and seemed to maybe hint that there could possibly be some things going on behind the scenes, and he wants to see Nevada Gaming get involved. We had Dan Smith drop by. He talked a little bit about his thoughts on the matter, and also mentioned that he thinks that Maury should be doing more of the investigation. I think if you guys aren't familiar with Maury Eskandani, he's Eskandani. Maury did high stakes poker after dark, all of the most famous poker shows from back in the day he ran, and he's also I believe the executive producer or maybe just the creator. I'm not entirely sure what his role is at Poker Go, but he is the man, and everyone has a lot of respect for him, and definitely someone that they want to see involved in an integrity situation because he's so well trusted. Okay, so let's go ahead and see who else we got in the mix here. Could throw a couple invites over to a couple more people. I'm actually going to go here briefly to someone that plays on the live stream a little bit. Hop on here. Salim Corey. Hope I pronounced your last name. Oh, actually, sorry. Hold on. Brewer just got here, so we're going to go ahead and add him in. Brewer, you're live. Welcome, man.
Do you need to put the cam on, or am I good?
If you got the cam, why not, man? Give the viewers on YouTube a little taste. Congratulations, by the way, on your victory.
I am just chilling outside waiting for some boba right now. I wasn't exactly planning for this.
Oh, some boba?
Yeah. Tiger Sugar, very good place if no one's been.
Okay, interesting. I'm not in the boba game, but I had a Korean roommate for a little bit in Vegas, and he was on the boba grind. So I've had a few.
Yeah, my girlfriend's Chinese. She got me into it.
Okay, so I guess let's just kind of kick it off then. Obviously you won this tournament. I think we talked before. You said you only played with him on the final day. So
yeah,
what was your experience like playing with Martin? And I guess what were your thoughts on what happened the day before?
So like I wasn't at his table. I knew people uncomfortable. Obviously I've hold things too. It's just hard not having been at the table to have like some big opinion. For me, I just took the stance. I was going to make sure I covered my calls. You can check. I'm extremely careful about it every hand I play. And I was just trying to not let him bother me. I do think on day 3, based on like what I've seen and the way he played, I don't think anything was going on at the final table, but that doesn't mean anything for past behaviors. Just means the final day, once people were alerted of it, it seemed as if he wasn't trying something.
Do you think maybe his play shifted from day 2 to day 3? Because we did see some kind of aggressive, sort of crazy hands on day 2. I didn't watch through the whole final table. I just saw the brief clips and stuff. It seemed maybe we didn't see that play style on the final day.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't rewatched the final table yet. Actually, I haven't. It took me a while to get like some sleep after and stuff, and
yeah, the rhino is open pretty late.
Yeah, no, I'm not a rhino guy. I just had adrenaline.
Sapphires?
Yeah,
no,
more of a sapphire egg. Yeah, you get the Eldorado burrito after. That's the real key.
Yeah. Definitely a good spot for some Mexican food. So
yeah.
Okay, so final table, everything seemed on the up and up. But what are your thoughts on, Dan Smith and Tom Dwan was on here a little bit earlier talking about like if this guy should be allowed in future tournaments. Do you think that what we've seen from him constitutes a ban, or what do you think?
I think if I don't want to make any like strong statement because I just feel like I have so much less experience with Molten than like Dan has, right? I've played with the guy I think 2 times ever, including the final table. But I think if your goal is to actively make people uncomfortable, that's not acceptable behavior. And I don't have a ton to comment about the cheating stuff, but I do think he is trying to make people uncomfortable, which probably should be discouraged. I mean, not probably. It should be discouraged. There's no doubt.
But what do you do then? So like, let's just say that. So do we ban him? If you're an operator, do you allow someone to play in your tournaments? What are your thoughts? Because obviously he's gonna. So he's done this for years, right? Like,
yeah,
we've seen a lot of people come forward and say that they've seen this for years. Some people are saying they've caught him cheating in the past. To my knowledge, there's no actual proof of that yet, but he's certainly at least done this shtick for a long time.
Yeah.
So like, what's the next logical step then here if we think it's unacceptable behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think if operators decide that someone is bad for the ecosystem, in whatever way they just like deem that, if it's like, hey, he makes players uncomfortable, he does make people doubt gaming integrity, like we don't want his business, I think that's a reasonable decision. Like that's decision that I think companies just in general should make. Like if something's going to hurt your business or you make your customers uncomfortable, you don't want to allow that.
So you're talking about that from the operator perspective, though. I'm talking about from like the player perspective, right? Like, do the players want this guy banned? Like what? Like as a player in this event?
Yeah, I think the general consensus is that players would prefer to see him banned. I have, just because I've had so much less experience with him, I have less strong opinions, I think, than others. And he was also just nice to me. For whatever reason, he was being nice to me. So, but I think he clearly makes everyone uncomfortable, and like I felt bad seeing how it felt unfair to see like how much like Dan and Alex and Chance were having to deal with kind of a lot. So yeah, I think the players do want him banned.
Okay, interesting. So I want to talk about a different subject here because while I have you on,
Yeah.
I got to say the arc from what happened in our hand heads up to this is pretty incredible. So I'm sure some of the people in this channel have already seen it, but basically in the final four of the 25K heads up, I played versus Chris, and we had queens versus kings, pretty standard cooler situation. And I was down to the river, 2 outs, and I banged off a queen, and I did a couple laps celebrating around the arena. I saw your tweet that you didn't think I mean anything about. I definitely wasn't trying to like be insulting or mean or anything.
I legitimately did think it was funny. Like, also, just to be honest, we got it all in, and my first thought was, man, if this guy hits a queen, he's about to do laps around this fucking. So I was hyper prepared for it.
All right, well that's good at least. I knew I was fucked, by the way, when I put in the money and you go aces, and I'm like, oh no, that's not what I want to hear.
It's not a good sign when I'm only scared of aces.
It's not good. It's funny, in heads up, like there's not been a large number of times I can even remember getting aces versus kings over my career. Like it's pretty, like kings versus queens and kings versus jacks, like that obviously happens more, but like aces kings is like, I don't know, kings are pretty much the nuts.
Well, I guess also like, you get some like aces might mix some flatting, so you also just don't get it in pre as often.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
fair.
It's just so much more likely to be the kings queens or ace kings, etc.
Aces doesn't do much flatting, by the way.
Does it? I thought at some point it would flat like a 4 or 5 bet. I guess I just have too much MTT going on.
Yeah, so
I'm not some heads up specialist by any means.
So flatting aces to 3 and 4 bet is more of an exploit where you're just like, I think this guy's going to be too punty post flop. So it can be good versus certain people. Like I hope people don't trap their aces versus me, frankly. It can be quite good, but as you get really deep and heads up, you just gain so much by increasing the pot when you have aces that like you give yourself a chance to kind of win all of it, But anyway, it was definitely good to see you go from that to. Are you still here? He said, I'm out. I'm done with this conversation. Nope, no, he's back. Oh, well, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe we had. Oh, we're back. And that's that. Okay. Chris Brewer, thank you for joining us. We're going to be joined now by a Lodge regular. You know what? Oh, wait. Chris. Oh, I'm just going to bring you in for a second. Hey, sorry, I was bringing another guest here. I didn't know if you had technical difficulties or not, but I just wanted to say, but before I bring in, how do I pronounce this? Salim.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I always second guess myself whenever it comes to your name. But before I go, I just wanted to say, like, congratulations. It was great to see you go from taking that beat and then to just like come back and just win a huge tournament for a massive score.
It. Yeah, it was fun.
Awesome. Hopefully we can battle again in the future, man.
Yeah. Maybe I'll head over to the lodge.
We would love to have you. We've plenty of streams.
All right, I'm in.
All right, sounds great.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, so thank you for hopping on here. For those of you that don't know, you want to give a little background for the viewers?
Yeah, sure. My name is Salim. I'm in Houston now. I just got back in yesterday. I was actually out there. I railed day 3 of the guys after essentially min cashing the damn monster. But play at the lodge with you a few times. Continue to run my shit into your top pairs and not hold. So it's good.
Yeah.
But,
don't forget aces versus ace king too. That's also an important.
Oh, you remember? Nice. Okay.
I do remember that. Yeah. I remember my aces big pots. Those tend to stick out. So you said that you had some thoughts on everything. What were your thoughts on this?
I think I was watching the guys for a bit, and I was watching him, and when I was looking it all up, it had become clear to me through, I don't remember where I saw, but I saw he was also one of the older players. And I was watching the whole time, and I thought, man, it's really hard to hold his shtick as long as he was holding it up. Like, it's tough. Like, it's one thing to fuck around for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, right? Like, but he was nonstop. And I was just watching, and I was going, this guy is not neurotypical, which I think is the appropriate way to not be judgmental about it.
What do
Like,
you mean by that? Not neurotypical?
he's neurodivergent is I think the appropriate way to kind of label it. I've heard you use the term autistic, whatever, but obviously none of us are doctors. We don't know him. I've never met him. I've seen him a couple times. I understand people dislike him, and obviously I'm not one of the players on the table. But I do think the players themselves are obviously going to be biased here, especially the ones that didn't outlast him, right? And so everyone's going to just have this shitty feeling. But I think Chance's note, and I think your video surprised me. I actually thought you'd be coming down really hard on him, but I felt myself agreeing with your take, Chance's take, and honestly, I think Hanks's take is one of the most important takes because Hanks was watching him all day, right? And is sort of just observing with the most information and sort of poker experience of everyone, right? Because players are biased, right? You're on the table and that freaking sucks. Like no one wants to be in that situation. And to me, it really felt like he was trying to manipulate the table and make it seem like he was cheating. And I do agree with your point, and I think Brewer may have just said it as well. That should not be allowed. Like that's unacceptable in its own right, right? Like a bomb threat is not okay in any other setting, right? You're not allowed to have a bomb threat. And this is essentially a bomb threat at a poker table. And that should not be allowed. Like absolutely should not be. There's plenty of ways to fuck around and mess with people. And you essentially, in my opinion, we witnessed everyone else at the table fail to deal with his manipulation except Brewer. I thought Brewer did a great job of saying, all right, let's fuck around. Our team, their team, or you know what? And he just kind of went with the flow, whereas it really seemed to get under Dan's skin and it clearly affected him and it pissed him off. And I'm not saying it shouldn't have, everyone's different and it's tough, right? But
yeah, well, I think for Dan, just jump in on that for a second. I think you're right, but I think for someone like Dan Smith, right? I've known Dan for so many years. I mean, I first met Dan when I was like 18 or 19 years old. So I've known this guy for a decade and a half. We've obviously played poker a lot together. We played tournaments together. We both played online a bunch. I've played so much poker with Dan. He came to the lodge a few weeks ago. I've played so much with Dan. And Dan really wants to make sure that things are fair and held to the right standard. And I think like for people that view it like that, when you think someone might not be, he's worried. He's not just worried for himself, right? He's not just worried that I'm going to get cheated. He's like, this guy might get cheated. That guy might get cheated. I have to step up to the plate here because there are guys that are quiet. They're not saying anything. I need to and Dan didn't say this today, but I could tell from the video, he wanted to make sure that it was a fair game, right? So, and that's a good thing, right? It's good to have people that are doing that. But I think for Chris Brewer, I don't think he has like that kind of perception or kind of perspective about it. I think he's like, hey, I'm here to play my game. I'm going to make sure I'm going to play good. Of course, Dan wants to do the same, but I don't think Brewer was coming at it from like I have some onus or responsibility here to kind of like protect the game. At least that's the vibe I got.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fair and reasonable. And at the end of the day, I think, like I said, making the game seem cheated is not acceptable. And it's not surprising that it pissed everyone off and put multiple players on edge. They're playing for a shit ton of money, like it's a serious ass tournament, right? And it's pretty bad. I mean, you've played in more WSOPs than I have. Do you not know if some sort of rule like this already exists? I guess it doesn't, or else this wouldn't have been allowed. The concept of manipulating to such a degree where you're sort of fake cheating, fake making it seem like you're cheating. You know what I mean? This type of misleading behavior to this degree, do you know?
So I guess it really depends on, but typically speaking, the tournament director has a lot of leeway on and can kind of do some things as they see fit for the integrity of the tournament. So I don't think this would be specifically covered, but usually there is some leeway that they can, come forward with, right? And make because like sometimes stuff happens. Like, is there like a rule specifically for this guy? I mean, what would that rule look like?
Yeah, no, it's tough. And, one of the reasons I thought it was interesting to watch this card manipulation piece of him marking the cards and such, where he's clearly, that famous one now where he's making that big indent in it. It's like, and I think Hanks hinted at this as well. It's like, give me a break. He's under the lights. Like it's almost intentionally being done to piss everyone off and make everyone else be worried. Less so than, oh, here I am setting up my next card to view. Because by the way, it's really hard to see all these cards, and it's really hard to really identify all this. And there's no fucking contact lens system. Like, get the fuck out
Well,
of here.
no,
with
I think
this.
that's actually a thing. I think that does exist.
I mean, okay, maybe. I don't know. I'm no expert, but seems unlikely. And at the end of the day, the players have the ultimate defense. I mean, you just put your hands over the cards. It's over. Like, it's really over at that point. And now it's just a mental game. And you know, you kind of just have to deal with that. I do think I'm surprised the floor allowed it to be this nonstop though. That I think that's not cool. Like the broadcast is clearly hearing it. It's being tweeted. You've got Robl's tweet out there. You know, clearly the WSOP understands the concern. And I understand that they told him no standing up and all this, but like I feel like if I were on that floor, I walk up to that table and say, we don't know if you're cheating, or I'm whispering in his ear at a minimum. I'm whispering in Martin's ear, we don't know if you're cheating or if you're trying to make it look like you're cheating. But understand this from this moment on, both of those are not allowed and you will be disqualified.
Yeah,
We're not accusing you of anything. But if you are even making it look like you are, that is not allowed. It is the equivalent to a bomb threat, and we will not tolerate that. And that's just it.
Yeah, I think that would be a very reasonable thing for them to do. They did say that you're not allowed to do the stand up thing, right? Like they came over and said you need to stay seated, which is good. But how do they rule on the pressing into the cards thing? Because it's so slight. You know what I'm saying?
It is. And, you know, I think for the rest of the players, you just got to pull that deck and replace it. I mean, they can do that easily, right? I mean, they have to be able to do that fairly easily. And then again, you just warn them. And it's the same damn warning. You're marking cards. I'm not saying that you are marking them with the intent to cheat. I'm not saying you are even capable of said thing, but don't mark our cards. That is not allowed. You are clearly marking the cards.
Well, we don't know that they were actually marked, right? We just know he's
fair. Right. Yeah. We're making the assumption that he did mark them. The floor can see it. Everyone sees it. They're clearly marked. We can't go beyond that, right? We can't reasonably say that since they are marked, therefore you are cheating. You can't bridge that far yet, but you can potentially decisively decide whether they're being marked or not, and then clearly tell him, do not mark these cards. There's a new deck. If we see you marking these cards, you're out.
You know what? The more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm getting a better idea of what I think the line should be, which is if we feel like, in the way that you basically put it, if we feel like we don't know if you're cheating or you are imitating cheating, or maybe you're just clueless, but what you're doing here is making people feel like you're cheating because you're pressing on the cards and you're looking very closely at them. If you continue that, we are going to disqualify you. Do not press the cards. And then the floor basically has, like, I'm serious. If you are pressing these cards, we're going to disqualify you. So only do that if, knowing that you're going to get disqualified, whether you're cheating or not, we have to protect our games. That's actually very reasonable.
And it's actionable, right? And so your intent no longer matters. Like, this is just the rule. You can't do anything to the cards. You can't manipulate the cards, and you can't act like you're cheating. We're not going to accuse you of cheating, but you're kind of acting like it. We think you're a smart guy. You're 39 years old. Clearly, you're capable and interested in approaching the game in a more manipulative, exploitative manner, you know, on a meta level. That, you know, you can't argue with that. I mean, I love the fact that, you know, there's the Coons and the Foxons and everyone's quiet and they love the mental kind of quiet game, but you're going to encounter guys that want to play this way. I don't think it's awful. And by the way, it's pretty fucking entertaining to watch, as has been expressed many, many times, right? I mean, I don't even know if it's sadly. It was fun to watch it.
The chatter's fun, right?
Right.
Like the shit talking.
Exactly.
That's fine. I think.
Exactly. It was way more entertaining to watch. The players themselves may not love that piece of it, but you know, they can pop headphones in, they can deal with it in various ways. They can learn to adapt to that and also deal with it differently. You know, Brewer had more fun with it. Dan Smith was about to jump out of the stadium, right? I mean, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, you can't allow them to fake cheat. Let's just call it that. That cannot be allowed, and it shouldn't have been allowed even last night. Like, they should have stepped in. It's surprising that they didn't, with everything else going on. I think it's a bit much.
Absolutely. And on that note, we actually are going to be bringing in the Lodge general manager and tournament director to talk about how we would deal with this, because I think I have a better idea now, and I appreciate you stopping by to give us your thoughts.
Good to see you, man. Thanks.
Good to see you. See you again soon.
Yep.
All right. We are now joined by the dream team here from the lodge. You guys mics might pick up. We'll see how this goes. We are joined by the general manager, Joe Strazera, and tournament director, Anthony Chester. Welcome, guys. Welcome
What's
to
up,
the
sir?
stream today. What's up, guys?
We're good.
Oh,
Joe's just getting his headset on.
You're going to have to use one mic or mute yourselves when you're not talking, because then it's going to hear on both. I'll hear on both screens. Okay. Alrighty. So we are coming to you what appears to be live from the lodge in the back somewhere, I believe. Welcome to the stream, guys. And we have been talking a lot today about, Joe, you're frozen on your screen.
I am frozen.
Yeah. Also, there's like a high-pitched ringing noise. Maybe we should. Okay.
It's the server in the background. So we're up in the sniper's nest.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the stream here, guys. I think it's been an interesting one to look at as an operator. And I think that's something maybe that a lot of players, when they're kind of yelling about this stuff, they don't really have the perspective, right, of actually running a card room. What's it like if you have this happening in a tournament? What happens if you have a player doing this kind of stuff? And then also kind of the financial responsibility side of it, right? Because when you have players' money, you don't want to be just throwing that around willy-nilly. You need to take it very seriously that you have player funds and their entry and all that kind of stuff. So I guess maybe Anthony, maybe how about you kick it off for us and talk about kind of your thoughts on what you saw and how we would handle that in a tournament here at the lodge.
Well, so I was watching on Poker Go, and there was multiple aspects I was looking at. Of course, with the card marking possibilities in there. So to touch on that first, if anything would ever come up where the possibility of integrity of the game or anything like that, we would definitely be at minimum penalizing somebody. And depending on the severity of the integrity of the game, like marking cards and blatantly cheating, you're going to be DQ'd from the tournament just in general, because the integrity of the game is way more important than anything else. That's what Joe and I hold near and dear to our heart, especially for the club and for card rooms across the board. Should put integrity of the game first. So
Totally
and
agree.
Then say it again. I'm sorry.
I said totally agreed. Totally agreed.
Yeah. So if Joe wants to touch on the integrity part, and then we can go to the antics.
Sorry, I missed the first part of it. I'm assuming we were talking about Martin from last night.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts on from like a game integrity perspective, what he was doing? And like, because like the problem that I have, and I think like as a community, when we're trying to figure out what to do here, is we don't have 100% proof he's cheating, right? Obviously we don't have that, or he would have been arrested. So then the next step, is he cheating? It's debatable. Like you could make an argument both sides. Some people are on both sides of the fence. So I guess like as an operator, when I'm looking at this incident, I'm thinking, man, how should we deal with this? Like, what's fair to players? What's fair to the other players? What like kind of like what's the line that this is the point where we're going to ban you? Like, what are your thoughts on like from a game integrity perspective, the way that we should handle something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot. There's if we have clear proof, obviously, then it's an obvious choice of what we're going to do. I looked at a good amount of it. I saw the whole everything on Twitter, the whole thread, a bunch of videos. My personal belief is, it looks bad, but without definitive proof, I would have to inspect the cards myself, see if I saw markings, take a UV light to them, see if there was any ink. There was definitely things that looked bad, but nothing definitive. So it's really hard to just, put your foot down and say, this guy's cheating, we're going to ban him. It's a big accusation to make, and one that you really can't come back from. So it's a tough spot. I wouldn't, unless I had definitive proof, I wouldn't come down on it. I know the poker community really, a lot of big name people, a lot of people that are reputable in the industry, a lot of high limit players. I've never seen Dan Smith react like that. I've never even seen him lose his cool. So I know it took a lot for him to get to that point. But it's a little different when you're at the table. You have 250K at risk, and that's the way you're going to feel about it. So like I said, as an operator, we have to be subjective to it and just understand that even if the players don't like playing with him, and the little things like you put in a rule like they did is you can't stand up. The whole examining players' cards looked really bad. But like I saw your video, and if that's kind of his goal is to get people to think like that, put him on tilt, and if that's part of his gameplay, that's not, it's unethical maybe, but not cheating, and without proof, you're kind of bound by it.
So I guess like the question becomes, right, because there's two separate things. There's what should happen to his entry in this tournament, and there's what should happen to him moving forward. And those
Yeah.
aren't totally the same.
No.
Because like with an entry in a tournament, we're talking about someone's money in a tournament they bought into. I kind of feel like you need to have proof at that point. Maybe you could do what I talked about just a few moments ago, where I said, like, you tell the player, hey, stop doing this, or we're going to disqualify you. You give them like a very firm warning, like, hey, or maybe you do an orbit and then you do 3 orbits and then, then you're out of the tournament, right? Or something like that. But I guess like we're kind of separating these issues out, like DQ in an event versus a ban. I think a ban, you get more leeway than in a DQ. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, Poker 101, tournament poker specifically, DQing someone from a tournament is like the last thing you want to do. It's really, in my career, 15 years in the business, I've DQ'd 2 people. Both were out of my hands. They put chips in their pockets. But as for like behavioral things, I've never DQ'd for someone, because it's the last thing you want to do. You want to just give stern warnings and really hope, and just keep an eye on it and just hope that they change and that they don't keep breaking those rules.
Yeah. So in my career as well, putting chips in your pocket, we've done plenty of those. If somebody is violating rules too many times, they're put on, an orbit, 2 orbit, 3 orbit, and they still continue to card exposure or whatever those things are. I've done plenty of those. I had one scenario where blatant collusion was going on, and it was on the bubble between money payout and seat into a main event in at a property in Vegas. And when we had the blatant collusion be brought up, I had the colluder, basically, you are the money bubble, and everybody else got the seats into the main event. So it wasn't that I DQ'd and I just, you're eliminated in this place right here.
Well, that's a DQ.
So,
that's a DQ.
yeah, it's a
That is a
DQ.
DQ.
I mean, yeah, I mean, he would have had to add another. If it was a 5K buy-in satellite that he was playing into, and then he would have. I think it was like 2K was the bubble money, and then
so
he would.
Okay,
he got the bubble money. He didn't get the seat, even though
I gotcha.
at the time he was like, he could have walked away for 3 levels and still blinded into a seat. So it was that blatant of collusion that it was like, no, you are the money bubble, and everybody else is getting a seat, because the collusion was that bad. So there was no warning there. So those things are cut and dry. As far as what Martin could have been doing, I got to agree with Joe. It's going to be very difficult to, unless we can prove, the marking of the cards and all of those other things. If it's just possible antics, it's going to start with a round, 2 rounds, so on and so forth. But if it does get to a DQ, to where it's just an ongoing issue that you will not stop, you're going to have to be given a stern warning and then go from there. So it is kind of hard. And with me, it doesn't matter if it's a $50 buy-in like we do at the lodge, or if it was a $250K buy-in. We have a set of rules that we follow, that as long as we all are on the same page, it shouldn't matter what the buy-in level is. I mean, there's no leeway when it comes to integrity. So,
right. Yeah, I guess it is a little bit different from an operator perspective when you talk about player money and how you handle it. And that is something that I see a lot of on Twitter, when people are just kind of spouting off, like, you should just immediately get rid of this guy, ban him, take the money, hold the money. What are your thoughts on all the hold the money stuff? I see a lot of people out there, like, they should be holding the money. Dan Smith said here earlier on this podcast an hour ago, he said that he thinks that, you should at least hold the money while you investigate. What do you think should be like the line where a venue can decide to hold the money from a player?
Well, that's it. I mean, if you're just holding his payout, I'm guessing that's what Dan was referencing, holding the payout from the player. If there is a strong suspect of possible integrity violation where cheating is going to be coming in, it we have the right to change and alter anything there. The legality of things, maybe we could be crossing a line there, but I do believe that eventually the player is going to be paid out. If it does go to a disqualification and you're in the money, you still get that placement of where you got DQ'd. So I turned it off, and I turned it off, so I don't know where Martin finished in the tournament, if he won it or wherever
He got
may
third, I
have
think. Yeah.
he got third. So holding that money, that third place money. But okay, if you're going to say, well, we're going to DQ you and distribute the money amongst the other, because I know there was 11 players that cashed. If we're going to distribute it amongst the other 10 because you blatantly colluded or you blatantly cheated, that's something for the lawyers to figure out. And
Right.
holding it is one thing, but I still believe that he's going to wind up getting paid out no matter what had come across. So.
Yeah, I think also just there's going to be some legal perspective on holding someone's money that like I don't feel comfortable with like the idea of holding someone's money without like some serious proof that they cheated. Like not like, oh, they might have cheated. Like I don't know. Am I off base here? Like I feel like you shouldn't be holding people's money very lightly.
I mean, you're also going to get into a Gaming Commission is going to get involved. Nevada Gaming Commission is going to be involved in this in some capacity. And they're going to inspect the cards. There's a whole investigation that'll happen in jurisdictional states. This is going to become a gaming commission type thing where they're going to investigate, make a decision based off of that. So it's not solely going to be Caesars Entertainment making the judgment call on this. The Gaming Commission is definitely going to get involved.
Yeah, and that's good.
There's plenty of times where that is the benefit of some of with those things. That is the benefit of Nevada Gaming or wherever state they were in. So, they definitely are probably going to get involved if there's enough to come forward with it. So,
what do you guys think? So I'm sure you've both seen your fair share of cheaters over the years. What are your thoughts on the behavior of Martin? Because it really did not say cheating to me. Typically speaking, I think like based on human emotion, when you're strong, you try and seem weak, and when you're weak, you try and seem strong. And I think when cheaters typically are at the table, they try to do it really sly, bring no attention to it, just like kind of like under the table, like nothing happening here. To press cards and then stand up and look at them. Have you seen cheating? I'm not saying that makes him innocent. I'm not trying to say he's 100% innocent, but have you seen someone cheat kind of in that aggressive of a way before?
I mean, especially not when, cameras are on, it's a live stream table. It's a risky play. I don't really understand, I'm kind of on your side. I watched your video. I'm kind of on your side on this, that if you are cheating, that's a really risky place to do it on a 250K buy-in on a live stream table on one of the biggest stages. So I do lean towards that if he was cheating, he would be a little more discreet about it and not so blatant to just, like I said, I think a lot of his actions were just to make people, a little aggravated is kind of what I think his goal was off of it, not necessarily cheating.
Yeah, I have to agree with that too. I mean, it takes some stones to try and cheat while you have.
Ooh, is that a little apostle reference?
I didn't even think about that, but it takes some nerve to try and cheat while the cameras are on. Where, especially on that level, it'd be one thing if it was a standard stream where, and it takes nerve to try and cheat on when cameras are on. Period. But you're talking about 250K buy-in, 5 million up top, Poker Go Studio, WSOP, those four letters, they garner a lot of viewership. So, the antics in which he was doing were like, me and Michelle were watching, the wife were watching, and we're like, we want we want chance to either take him out, or somebody take this guy off the table so we don't have to watch him anymore, because it was annoying us as well. And some of the things that he was doing, constantly leaning forward. And then when I saw him that one time where he was like looking at Chance under the table, like, what are you looking at, dude? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And then looking at the 7 seat constantly, he's got you 2-1 in chips. Why are you constantly asking him what you're playing? He hasn't looked at a hand, and the chip counts. So you're just being nitty. And he got nicknamed the Mosquito for a reason, because he was just buzzy. So he was probably trying to put people on tilt and just get super frustrated with him. And that's where, sometimes when you go to break, you got to be like, hey, tone it down. You're getting a little bit into the ridiculous. So
is there a rule change that's needed in the procedures, either for the World Series of Poker or even at our room? Is there something that needs to be addressed kind of in the rules, like maybe a Martin Kabhrel rule, where you have, like, if a player seems like they might be cheating, then they're subject to a orbit penalty, or then warning, then a DQ, or what? Like, what?
No, that rule does exist. It's the Jamie Gold rule from just his talking antics of back when he's like, why are you calling me? I have ace jack. And
but that's not it's not talking. I'm talking about the card markings and the standing up and stuff, like the antics or whatever. Right?
It all comes into, well, if you're talking about the card marking and stuff like that, I mean, those things are there already. When you're
putting pressure on the cards, like he's like I assume he wasn't marking them, right? Because he kept pressing them.
Right.
But if they were marks, players would have easily seen them, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the players would have been like, this card is marked, but none of the other players at the table were bringing up that they could see anything. So the antics, though, there are rules. There's the, you just your mannerisms rules. There are in there. They are in the TDA and the WSOP rules, where you have to kind of act. We all have to be kind of 21 to be in the building. So why don't we act like adults here? So, the integrity rules and all of those other that are in place. So
I mean, there was one person that got accused, actually here at the lodge, of marking cards or just, running hot. And, you should look into, this guy winning this much in tournaments. And I actually, like, on a break, I swapped out the decks and I took a UV light to them and I inspected them for markings, and, I didn't find anything. But any player, that's going to bring it to attention, an operator has to take that serious, because it's players' money's at stake. And it's, especially in this stage, it's a lot of money at stake. And those players are going to be super intelligent. They're going to, pay attention a lot more than the average person. The players at that table, Chance, I think David Peters is there, Dan Smith, these are every player in that tournament is incredible at what they do. So they're going to look a lot more into this, and it's going to be really hard to get away with something like that in such a big stage. But like I said, as an operator, you have to at least look into it. You can't just, players complaining, so I'm not going to listen to it. You have to at least investigate it, because if you do find something, you have to do the right thing and protect not just the room you're working at. There's a bigger thing than all of us. It's the game of poker, and protecting the game, the integrity of the game, is the most important thing.
100%. And I like that. That's our outlook. I think that's our outlook as well with our show that we run. I think we're, just the most security first in terms of the way that we run things I mean, at least on par with all of the other ones out there at the top of the game. We take our security incredibly seriously. We do not have your whole cards in the back. We have a hardwired system. We've gone through so many steps to make sure it's safe. 0 people have it until it's live in the commentary booth. We isolate all of the areas. We do so much to go above and beyond to make sure that our games are safe, because especially as a poker player, and you guys are players too, we know how important it is to make sure that games are safe. On this note, by the way, guys, I want to say thank you for joining. Anthony Chester, our tournament director, Joe Strazzera, our general manager, run a very tight ship at the lodge. I'm glad we changed that fold out of turn rule, because that one really took no prisoners.
Well, I mean, you were subject to it, so
Yeah.
you only got the one hand instead of the three. So, but you did wind up finishing second in the Tuesday free roll. So
I did. I got another fold out turn penalty during our high roller series.
Well, that is true.
And I didn't even. I said, you don't even need to call the floor. I just stood up and I just walked away.
No, you did.
I'm like, it's too embarrassing. Don't call anyone over here.
But
I don't want anyone to see this.
But you know what? It's nice to be able to say to like new dealers and stuff when we're hiring and going through orientation. I say, Doug Polk has gotten a penalty here before. It doesn't matter that he's the owner of the room. Anyone will get a penalty. Anthony has played in a tournament here and put himself on penalty before.
Two. So real quick. We got a comment from a player today that said we ruined him for all other tournaments because he just got back from the WSOP, and everybody needs to follow our model on what we do because of the fact that we do put integrity at so high, and we run the best tournaments in the country, and all of that. So it was good to hear that when we came in today. So that was
once
good.
You've played in a tournament. Once you've played in a tournament that doesn't give out penalties, it's not enjoyable.
I will say one of the two penalties I got, honestly, I thought I had a really good case. I should not have gotten a penalty, but I didn't want to be the owner that tries to like not follow the rules. So I just said, fuck it, I'll just take the penalty. Just sit me out. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining today. I want to hop on. We have another guest hopping in. Appreciate it, guys. We are now going to be joined by Tom Wheaton. Oh, stop echoing. Tom, I'm going to put you off the stream for a second. Do you have headphones by chance, if you can hear me? Because you're listening on speakers, and then your microphone picks me up on your speaker or on your microphone, and then I hear myself on infinite loop. And I barely like listening to myself back once, much less for the whole duration of the conversation. So if you got some headphones, it'd be...
Give me 2 minutes, and I'll put the headphones in, brother.
I believe this is the founder of Faded Spade, the card manufacturer. But we're going to have him join in a moment. And then also, I think we are going to have Chance Kornuth hop on and give his thoughts as well at some point in the near future. By the way, guys, if you're liking this format, why don't you throw a thumbs up on the video? If you're on the YouTube audience, if you're on Twitter, just like and retweet the spaces, show some support for some content. I'm putting in the effort here to bring you guys the good news, and definitely appreciate the love and support I get from the audience. You guys are the reason I make this stuff. If you weren't here, I wouldn't be either. So appreciate you guys all for tuning in. And are we working? Is it working, Tom? We're going to find out soon. All righty. Well, I'll let you guys watch Tom struggle for a little bit here while he tries to figure it out. I do see some nice faded spades in the background. Some poster-sized faded spades. This will actually be very interesting because I think getting a perspective of the guy who is the producer of at least a good chunk of these decks actually into the market.
Are you hearing echo now, Doug? Headphones are in. We're all good.
I'm still hearing the echo.
All right, then give me 2 minutes. I'll let Thomas know when we're ready.
Okay. You might want to unplug the speakers and replug back in the earbuds. I'd unplug the speakers though, because then I'm not hearing myself. I think. Probably. Anyway, I do appreciate everyone tuning in here for the content and the love and support on the channel. We try and put out a lot of good stuff. We've had a very busy last few months. We had the $1 million game. We had not winning a bracelet. We had lots of different dramatic stories to cover. My career almost ended. That was fun. A lot of stuff for you guys to enjoy over the last several months. And I hope you have been enjoying it. I love you too, Ambush Squad. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Okay, let's see here. All right, Tom, you ready? Okay. You're still muted. Let's see what we got.
We're ready, my man. Ready.
I think we're good. Okay, we are good.
Baby.
We are here. We are live. We are joined by Faded Spades founder, correct? You founded Faded Spades?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining the podcast today.
You bet, man. Thanks for having me. I want to make it real clear. Hopefully you can still hear me all right, that this is definitely like not something that is brand specific. I'm not here to talk about one brand of cards versus the other, just to offer insight into some of the behaviors that we saw, some of the things we do and most other card companies do in terms of like card marking, security, and things like that. So happy to be here, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I think your perspective is going to be very unique, right? Because you actually manufacture decks. Did you guys manufacture the ones that are used at the World Series?
No, World Series of Poker uses a completely different brand. We obviously have worked with Poker Go for quite some time. So I will say flat out, guys, Poker Go has some of the best security measures. And obviously they're the production company for WSOP. They have some of the best security measures in the industry when it comes to card security. Of all the organizations we work with, they're top of the line, one of the best. So I have full confidence in them that if there's something going on, they're going to know about it. They're going to tell us about it. And if they thought something was happening while it was going on, they probably would have changed the decks out or stopped the game. So I just want to put that out there. I do know their security measures and their protocols are top of industry.
All right, guys, I messed with Tom's mic settings a little bit. Let me know if that's better. Tom, keep yours how it is. I can control it on my side, and I just want to make sure that it's good for the viewers. I lowered the volume a little bit and edited out the echo. Let's see if that works. Okay, so as far as marking cards go, did you get to see the clips where Martin was pressing into the cards? I think a lot of people are questioning whether that's creating indentation on the cards that you could then see by looking over at the cards. What's your thought on that theory?
Yeah, this is actually really specific thought. So, Doug, I got the Yeti mic going. We should be fine. But like the deal is this: like, there's a thing called core strength, right? And core strength is like really important for cards, especially when it comes to poker. And like when we were developing our brand 6 years ago, core strength is really important because, from a behavioral standpoint, the actions he was taking when he was like folding cards and pressing those 3 fingers into the center of the card. That is literally a behavior that we know people who try to make cards do, right?
Oh,
like
interesting.
that is against that, because what can happen is, even if it's not like a nail mark in the middle of the card, you can indent the core. So at different angles based on lighting, you can see that indent. So again, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just providing insight in terms of things that we, as a leading card company, try to protect against. So again, though, I will say, like, I know I'm kind of like covering a little bit, but like, I think if Poker Go really saw those indents in cards, like, they would have changed the decks out. But that is a behavior that known card markers do to the center of the card.
Wow, that's fascinating. So I guess let me try to understand this a little bit better. It's not indent in the card in like a traditional playing card way. It's about like the core of the card, is what you're saying?
Yeah, you have 2 areas you really want to protect on a card. You want to protect the core through core strength, which can be like through
Sounds like an ab workout.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, which I need. You're a dad now, the dad bod. I'm trying to get to where you're at, bro. So it's like the core strength is like really important because people can mark the core. You can see the indents, whether they're nail marks or not, depending upon lighting. Corner strength is also really important, right? Because if certain cards are, maybe have a fingernail in the corner, or a certain corner is indented, people can look for that corner and be able to tell what kind of card it is. Now, what's great is the cards that WSOP uses like follow a lot of security measures. They have borders. It's really tough to see marking, I'm sure. Important to know, RFID cards compared to regular playing cards are much more harder to mark because they're technically usually thicker. So like, but core and corner is what card companies try and protect against when it comes to marking.
Very interesting. I think we saw in some of the clips pushing down more on the corner and in some more in the center. Is it, in your experience, have you seen people use both of these techniques at once, or do people typically use one, or what do you think?
I mean, I'm sure if people who are well versed in this and exhibit that behavior, they're probably doing both. I don't know if it's one or the other, but again, like, these are things that Poker Go, I'm sure, is looking out for. Right. The other thing to note is this: like, it could just be a behavioral antic that like this guy is used to doing if the allegations against him from so many other players are that he's known for doing this, right? So he could have been doing this during the tournament with the regular cards and having success with it, but not having success with it at the feature table or final table because RFID cards are thicker to mark, right? But I do have to believe that like a lot of operators are trained in this, they know this, and they'd be looking out for it.
Yeah, I think they do a great job in general at Poker Go, and I imagine they would be a lot more on top of it than other people would. But is this the kind of thing? So one of the things that I thought when I saw the kind of playing with the cards was, well, if I was a player at the table and I saw someone doing that, then of course, when I get dealt cards or as cards being dealt, I'm going to be looking, right? I'm going to be watching these cards. Are these markings something that even just like your average everyday poker player would be able to tell pretty clearly, or are these things that would be? Oh, interesting.
No. So like if I was any player at that table, and I'm not a high stakes player, I'm a mid stakes player, but if I saw that behavior, I'd call their ass out right away. So I like commend Dan and others who called it out right away, because that's not normal behavior. It just isn't. But like what most people look out for are nail markings, right? So most people will just look out to see if like the corner has a nail marking or some kind of obvious blemish. To a trained eye, a lot of these folks who are marking cards, like again, it could be lighting. It could be the way the core indents with it.
Describe the lighting to me. Like, what do you mean by lighting? Like
So
the way
think
that
about it. Yeah, so think about this, right? You played at a ton of 8-handed tables, 6-handed tables, and lighting is different depending upon what seat you're in and etc. So I look at this, and if there's somebody trying to mark the corner of, if there's somebody trying to mark the center of a card through an indent or something, some kind of like an indent versus a nail mark that a lot of people won't see, that indent is going to be visible at different angles based on different lighting in different ways. So seat 3 might be able to look at the center of the card and not see any type of difference, whereas seat 4 or 5 or 6 might be able to, depending upon all those factors. So like, again, not making allegations, but like I've seen people do those antics where they're standing up, looking at the cards from different angles, and maybe they're trying to see something that they've actually done before. These are known behaviors of people who mark cards in poker or any casino game, which is why companies like Faded Spade, and I'm sure competitor companies, during QA processes, they're testing for this. They're testing to make sure that the cards are the right thickness, to make, if they're really digging into it, that those indentations don't happen or those markings don't happen. I can't comment to the thickness or the flexibility or whatever of other cards, but I know that's something we do. Like we literally make sure there's a core strength. So if someone is pressing down the center, like that indent doesn't happen. But we know people who mark cards are doing these things to try and gain an edge.
Interesting. So going back to the lighting thing, because I think that one's a bit more interesting than just the marking the corners. The corners one with an indentation, I just feel like that's going to get caught by players.
Yeah.
The center of the card with the lighting that would then be difficult for a player to see quickly. Would that explain like checking for different angles as well to see where the light reflects?
You might not see it right in front of you, but you might be able to see it at a distance. And that's just a fact. Like it's not like an allegation, it's just a fact. So I don't blame any of the players for speaking up. I'm glad they did. Doug, I remember a few years ago when you spoke up in the Poker Go studio about some decks you thought might have been marked, and those were actually Faded Spade decks at the time. And you have every right to do that, and players should do that. And I remember watching that as the owner of Faded Spade with our cards on the table saying, I'm glad that happened, because if players don't speak up, then sometimes it's hard for operators to tell.
Well, also as the deck manufacturer, if decks are marked, obviously you're putting your best decks out there, right? But if a deck is marked, that's not your work. That's someone taking your work and using it for cheating. Of course, you want people to get caught that are doing that. The event you're talking about was actually the one drop that I won in 2017. We were 5 or 6. Bro. Thank you. Didn't see that coming, but thank you. We were like 5 or 6 handed, and I got dealt my cards, and I looked at the back of them, and I'm like, these are marked. And I looked, and I'm like, oh, those are marked. And I realized that pretty clearly a lot of the cards had been marked in that deck. I don't even know how long we were using them. And at this point, I wasn't an operator. I was barely even a live poker player. My career had all been online, but I could see the markings on those cards. You have to wonder, how long were those cards being used? Why did this not get caught before? Who at the table might have already caught on to this? Did someone just not saying anything? Because, when I said, I'm like, guys, stop play. These are marked. And I remember they paused it, and I was in the tag team at the time, and I ran to the tournament, and I got dealt a couple hands, and I ran back to play my final table. Anyway, side story. But anyway, the point of the matter is, like, you see cards that are marked somewhat often, and I think as like a production, and what was said to us, by the way, was like it could have been the shuffler, right? That was making the marks, which adds a little layer of complexity to this. So some streams are hand shuffle, some streams are automated shuffle. In your experience, do automated shufflers, automatic shufflers, do those create markings on cards?
They absolutely can. Yeah. So different card brands have different settings for different automatic shufflers. So like a faded spade card might have a certain thickness, a certain size that's different than a competitor card, right? Like the ones used at WSOP, versus like WPT or MGM or whatever. So like if those settings aren't specifically set for the card brand that's using, maybe it's too tight, maybe it's too short, then yeah, they could absolutely leave those markings. I will say like operators are really good at correcting settings when that happens. We'll have card rooms like Lodge, right? Lodge doesn't use automatic shufflers, but at the same time, they moved to us because of card security, talking to Joe. And a lot of companies do that, but when they do that, they might replace faded spade decks with their old decks, and they have to change the automatic shuffler settings specifically for those decks. Before they do, that's going to leave marks. It can leave corner marks, it can leave center marks. So absolutely, to answer your question, automatic shufflers can play a role in it, but I believe wholeheartedly that PokerGo and WSOP have that completely figured out and configured accurately.
Makes sense to me. One note for the viewers: if you're playing in a game with an automatic shuffler and you are at a non-licensed venue, leave the game immediately, because those the operators of those will only maintain them at licensed venues. If you're at a home game and there's an automatic shuffler, that means a person is setting it up to fix it. They have to buy it secondhand, the black market. Do not play with unregulated card shufflers. It is way safer to have a hand shuffle at those types of venues. So specifically, if you're playing in Texas, do not play with an automatic shuffler. Briefly here, I just want to mention for people on Twitter Spaces, we are joined right now by Tom Wheaton of Faded Spades. And in 10 minutes, roughly, we're going to be joined by Chance Kornuth to talk about his thoughts on it. Of course, Chance had a pretty long tweet earlier today with his thoughts about cheating or not cheating. Moving away from actually, just to finish off with the card game integrity thing, is there anything that players can be doing to protect themselves in situations like this? Is there any advice that you have? I think as like your perspective is so unique because we have all these people with all these thoughts, but you create cards, so you have like this perspective. Is there something that players can do to protect themselves that might not seem on first thought like something that they should be doing? How can players make sure that there's not cheating going on in their games?
Don't be afraid to speak up. Like the goal of any operator, and of course any card brand that's a vendor of an operator, is for game integrity. And cards, whether they're plastic or paper, no matter how high quality they are, like humans or shufflers or whatever, they can leave markings intentionally or unintentionally. So just speak up. They'll change out the deck. It is not hard. Like operators have tons of decks in the back. They have tons of decks on hand specifically for these reasons. So like if you feel like someone's marking a card, or even if you feel like the deck has just been in use for quite some time and they could use a fresh deck because maybe you're picking up on things, and if you're picking up on things and have integrity, other people could be picking up on things and maybe they don't have integrity. So just ask for it to be changed. I think that's totally fair. A lot of operators will be changing out decks like every few dealers, right? So it's like every dealer turn, they should be changing out one color deck for the other most of the time, depending on state regulations. But it's very rare that you'll be playing with the same two decks for any like 10-hour period of time.
Right. Makes sense. What are your thoughts on what should happen from, an operator perspective, or maybe even from a player pool's perspective? Are these antics over the line? Is this a point where we should be banning this player, warning this player, or what are your thoughts?
I have a hard time with it because like from the common sense, like naked eye perspective, with my experience being in this industry as a player, as like literally a card brand like owner, like I look at that and say this guy is exhibiting all the behaviors of someone who's trying to mark cards. But I don't have any proof of that except witnessing that behavior. I think like PokerGo or any operator would be able to know fairly quickly post game after inspection of the decks if this was happening. And I'm sure they would do something about it. Like, I really believe that. I will say I see in chat, and like we were talking about it before, like could there be like this X-ray vision solution on the card, and do they have like X-ray glasses or contacts that can see UV markings and stuff? Like I think the probability of that is extremely low. Like that would be found out right away, like that, right? Especially post game.
So
I think like
sorry. While we're on that,
theory.
so when we're talking about sticky hands or like invisible marks or like marks where you have like contacts that can see the marks, are you familiar with any stuff like that? Do those things actually work? I mean, I know that there's been people banned for that. Like, I think there's a story from France like 10 years ago where someone got caught for that. But is there like an invisible ink / contacts thing? Is that possible?
Sure. Like there are UV coatings that you could put on anything, and that certain glasses will show like the UV marking. Like that's not just cards. That's like anything, right? But like I would say, like the success rate of somebody trying that and the ability to see that right after the game is like very apparent because it just would be right. I think like that would be one of the last things people would do. To be honest, I think it's much more along the lines of these more consistent behaviors we see with, center or core kind of marking or corner marking.
Why is it just to talk about that again? Because I find this kind of fascinating. I did a little Googling. I saw there's like some kits you can buy online. I almost wanted to buy one, but I didn't want to get scammed. Why is it that it would be one of the last things you try? It's like it's invisible ink, right? So people would only be able to see it if they had the UV vision or whatever it would be. Why would it be so easy to get someone caught like that? Like, I guess
in
why?
my mind, yeah. So like in my opinion, like the tools that an operator could use during the game or after the game to find that out right away, it would be instant, right? You'd be instantly caught. So that's just my opinion on the subject. I have never seen that in my professional career. I haven't like experienced that. I've only heard or seen, the stuff that I'm talking about.
Right. Okay. So that isn't exactly a great method then either. So really, like this interview, this part of the talk is really interesting to me because I feel like I'm pivoting away from some of my earlier takes, which were kind of like, well, it's probably not indentation because players would notice. Maybe it's some advanced thing like ink with contacts. Now maybe I'm going back the other way. Like, but so with the indentations though, like the World Series should still have those decks, right? So
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Can't they just check them for the things that you're saying? I mean, I'm sure that's like step one, right? Like, wouldn't you imagine they've done that?
Sure. I'm sure they are doing that. I mean, look, like I said, I've worked with so many of the people who were involved with those productions and I hold them in the highest regard. And my assumption is that because of their professional nature, because of their seriousness about game integrity, they already have done those tests or they are doing those tests. Like, I really believe that. And I also believe like if there's something to come out of it, they will share that publicly. I really do, like knowing those people. When it comes to these types of card markings, like we're talking about, Doug, those core markings or those corner markings, like it's like 6 to 1, half dozen the other. Like the reason why I think that's more readily used to someone with a trained eye is because the feedback afterwards if someone is accused is, well, that kind of stuff can just happen during normal gameplay.
Right.
That type of stuff can just happen when someone's looking at their cards regularly, depending upon how they're using them. And that's why I lean towards like that stuff being done a lot more to a trained eye versus any of this like, third hand kind of like liquid or markings or stuff like that.
So then what do you think then, given that Poker Go is, running the show here and given the amount of, the care that they take towards this, do you think that this guy cheated or not? What do you think?
I think he exhibited the behaviors of what we in the poker card industry guard against: core marking and corner marking. I think those behaviors were exhibited, and it's blunt, dude. Like when you're folding a card and pressing your 3 fingers into the middle of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's not something someone can like defend. Like that's not a tick. Like that's like a intentional type movement. Right.
Yeah.
So I see that and I'm like, it doesn't make me feel good. Didn't make the other players feel good, which is why they spoke up. If he's truly doing it as a tactic to frustrate people or annoy people, if he's doing that because it's something this guy has a behavior of doing in the past and maybe wasn't getting away with it with an RFID card because they're thicker. Honestly, Doug, like, I don't know. All I can say from a professional opinion, like the behaviors that were being exhibited are literally the things that most card companies will try and guard against and use during QA to make sure that cards are not easily markable.
That is fascinating. And it moves the conversation over a little bit more into the World Series of Poker's department of how in depth are they looking at these decks. But I assume they are. And then we're back to the same thing.
Look, dude,
it's
Doug,
so tough. It's so tough because it's like you're like, oh man, but then they have the decks, and I'm sure they look for this, and if it's not there, then what? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Doug, I say this without World Series of Poker as a customer. I'm positive they're doing what they need to do. These guys, World Series of Poker. Like, look, transparency. Fade and Spade were the official cards of the World Poker Tour. We're not the official cards of the World Series of Poker. I still believe World Series of Poker, Poker Productions, anybody involved with that is going to do the absolute right thing to try and get to the bottom of it. So I would say, like, whatever they come up with, in terms of a response, is something like we need to take as like truth. I really do. I have that type of faith in them, even though they're not, direct customers.
All right, awesome, Tom. Thank you for joining us today and give us some interesting takes on manufacturing cards. It's good to get that perspective. I think that it was needed to add to the discussion, and certainly gives us a different. We can look at it with a new light, or shine a new light on the subject. I don't know.
Hey, I see what you did there.
Trying to work a little joke in there. Dude. All right, thank you, Tom.
Thomas didn't even have to write that for you.
No, I did that off the cuff, man. Off the cuff. Sometimes I have my own jokes. All right, thank you, Tom. Appreciate you joining.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
All right, sounds good. We are now joined by Chance Kornuth, a member of the final table, where this 250K recently concluded. Chance, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure. How are you, Doug?
I'm good. I'm trying to get some information about this situation. We just had a pretty interesting guest on. He talked about, as a card manufacturer, what you look for in quality assurance to make sure that your product is good and doesn't have markings. And he said, well, you do the exact things that he was doing to the cards at the table to make sure they're not marked, which I don't know. Hearing that from him definitely puts a different perspective on things a little bit. But I'm just kind of trying to weigh things. What are your thoughts? I saw you had a very long tweet today where you put together your thoughts on the matter. I think a lot of people agreed with your take, or at least agreed with parts of your take. It was quite a long post. You put a few words to paper on that one. What are your thoughts on it? If you kind of want to reiterate it for people that haven't read your tweet.
So I definitely, like, at some points was thinking I was getting cheated and was really uncomfortable. And then after I was reassured by, security, the floors, the other people involved, Maury, that they're fairly certain he wasn't cheating. It really got me to thinking, like, okay, well, why would someone be doing what he's doing? And if you can gain this edge by creating the illusion that you're cheating, so none of your opponents 3-bet bluff you or bluff the river or something like that, then all of a sudden you just know that everyone has value against you. You have such a significant edge in the situation. Not to mention, like, it's so difficult for us, like all of us that are at the final table or playing with one day twos, etc., to play our best if we're constantly worried about covering our cards the second they come out and arranging our chips in a way that blocks his perspective, and just being afraid that we're getting cheated makes it so incredibly difficult to play your best. And so, like, I just think, like, in general, that is like an edge that that should never be like a normal human's goal, to try to get that edge. And, like, it just shouldn't be allowed, especially in the highest stakes imaginable.
Yeah, agreed. And Dan Smith actually came on, talked a little bit about it earlier. He had a hand where I think he 3-bet Martin with ace-5 suited or some suited ace, and then Martin 4-bet him kind of big. And he thought, well, I would normally bluff jam here sometimes, but, like, am I just going to get snapped off by, like, ace-8? And, this is the biggest part of the tournament, and I'm just going to get owned. So, and then he ended up making a fold that he might not normally make. So that definitely impacts people if you think there's some % chance that someone's cheating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think, like, in general, like, not to mention that I truly believe now in hindsight that he's intentionally trying to give the illusion that he's cheating so he doesn't get bluffed. And, like, that hand against Dan and other people, me in certain spots, so afraid to bluff him. Like, there's just no room for that. Like, that's just not what this game is about. This game is about, like, I do think it's about mental warfare, but, like, every line can be crossed. And I think that, like, he's taking it, like, way, way too far.
What do you mean it's about mental warfare?
Well, I mean, like, it's a game of incomplete information, and you're trying to do your best to decode based on the information you have, and to, take the best lines and get value and make cool bluffs. And And if you're just afraid to even like, I couldn't even like focus and play my best poker because I was so worried about like if he could see my cards or if he knew what I had.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's pretty clearly over the line whether he's cheating or not to be insinuating he might be cheating, because now you have to take that seriously as a threat as a player.
Yeah, and I just think of it, it's like two situations. Like, okay, there's like a tiny percent chance at this point in my mind that he was cheating. Okay, he should be banned. And if you're intentionally giving the illusion that you're cheating, like that's just like an edge that I don't think is fair. And you know, poker should be a fair game, and I don't think it is with what he's doing.
How much did you play with him over the course of this tournament, and have you played with Martin before?
So first time I played with him was actually in last year's 250K, and I think Dan Zach or someone else was there who gave me the impression that he was cheating and he was doing the same antics. And, you know, so focused on covering my cards and afraid to take certain lines against him that I did play poorly. And this year, like, I was more protective. And, you know, the second the cards came out, I would cover my cards. And, like, when someone got to the table, I would, like, let them know, like, hey, like, there's a chance Martin's marking cards. Like, you know, just make sure to cover him when you're in hands against him. And, you know, just like, if everyone at the table thinks that you're cheating, like, I mean, just the edge that you get from that is just so extreme. Like, no one's going to try to run a bluff on you. Like, you're going to get to open whatever you want. No one's going to 3-bet bluff. Everyone's going to play incredibly straightforward. And it's just like puts you in just a terrible situation.
So what do you think should be the standard here? And again, like I talked about this a little bit before, but there's kind of two separate questions, right? There's the question of like, what do you do in the event with the player who has chips? And then what does like the operator do moving forward in future tournaments? And I think that they have kind of different sort of like prerequisites in order to make action, right? So like as an operator, I can say, you know what, we really don't like how you conduct yourself in this tournament. We're just not going to let you play here anymore. That's much easier to do than to be like, hey, we're disqualifying you from this tournament and taking your money, right? So I guess like, what are your thoughts on what should have happened in the tournament, and then what do you think should happen moving forward?
I think the staff, like the floors on day 2, Maury, the other staff on day 3, at least because I didn't play with them on day 1, did a really good job and exactly what they should have. Sorry, I'm also playing this $3,200 online bracelet event.
The grind never stops.
Yeah.
I hope you're not playing that one because we're live right now.
Oh yeah, he's bluffing me on the turn right now. He saw the 6-7 of hearts in my hand and took it down.
I saw red, man. I saw red.
Right. So I think the floors and all the staff like did a really good job of doing their best to reassure us. They're like, hey, we're fairly certain he's not cheating. And then it wasn't even until like later that I like realized that his motivation for doing what he was doing was like to make us think he was intentionally, and like, you know, just to fuck with people. And I had never even like considered that. Like, it's just not the type of line, I guess, that like I would take or want to do or like anything like that.
Yeah, my wife was trying to. She's like, "Why would?" I was trying to explain like how he might be doing this to get in people's heads. She's like, "Why? Then they're gonna think you're a cheater." And I'm like, "Yes, but
like
he
who
knows
would want to do that?
He's using that potentially to then make people play bad." And then she's like, "Yes, but then everyone thinks you're like." I'm like, no, but he's like, I like legitimately couldn't get it across to her that like what was the point was, you know? I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to any rational human why you would want to do that. Like, you just want the world to think you're like a scumbag. Like, that's just bizarre. And like, I see this like girl.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just like see this girl with him, and I'm like, how are you like dating this person who like wants the world to think he's like this cheating scumbag? Like, I just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how is it like he on breaks he's like, haha, the whole table thinks I'm a cheater. This is so much fun, and they're like laughing together, or like, does she not know, or like it's just like kind of dumbfounding to me. Like, I just don't understand.
It's definitely confusing. What do you think about the take? I've seen it from a few people that he is a little bit out there, maybe potentially on the spectrum in some capacity, and these are things that he's, you know, he's just kind of weird, and this is part of the quirkiness, and because there are people that think that is what's happening here. What's your thought on that take?
I mean, I think that like if I hadn't played with him for so many hours now, and specifically in the last week, maybe I could get that impression, but after giving it some considerable thought, like it makes total sense that he's doing it to gain an edge. So okay. I'm a firm believer that that's what's going on.
Right. I mean, that does appear to be the most likely thing. I mean, I think even if you're a little bit weird, it doesn't make sense to me why you'd be pressing them as you put the cards in. I don't really understand.
And he's like looking at me. He's like, "Hey, look what I'm doing," as he's like sliding the cards, and it's like, okay, in hindsight, like, yeah, I get it. But like in the moment when you're playing for $5.5 million, like it's pretty alarming and scary to play against. And like I was physically uncomfortable, and like, I've left in some pretty big spots before and not felt the level of physical discomfort that I did when I had the realistic fear that a player knew what I had.
Yeah, I've played players like that actually. When I was getting cheated, I played a hand versus someone online where this guy was just killing me in every hand. He just knew exactly what I had. He was like min raising me in spots. He was calling me down, and then I filed a report with PokerStars. I don't go tinfoil hat very often, and they did like a 3-month investigation, and they're like, "Oh, this guy was for sure cheating you. Here's your money back." Actually, I was looking at the email. They said, we regret to inform you we can only pay you back 34.4K of the 34.8K that you lost. And I'm like, okay, the 400's on the house, man.
Wow,
It's all good.
that's like
yeah.
the highest percentage reparations I've ever heard in online poker.
Yeah, it's sick. It's sick.
That's
honestly.
pretty good.
Yeah, he got me on full tilt too, but I got 1% back. So stars for the win.
See, that's what I'm used to. Is like, hey, so and so were cheating you online. Here's your $500 back. It's like I'm down 62,000. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, not great. What are your thoughts on some of the posts, like for example from Andrew Robl, where he made some comments about how basically he's marked cards in every tournament he's ever played with him. Do you think that kind of strong language was appropriate, or do you think maybe it was a bit too much, or what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, like sitting at the table, had I not been assured, and I do believe that the investigation still may be ongoing by higher ups, but like without that assurance that he wasn't cheating, yeah, I'm looking at him, I'm watching him mark cards every single hand, right? So I can totally see that perspective. That being said, like this is also what happened here at the WSOP. Like we don't know what happens in Razmadov or in other events that Robl has played with him. Maybe he actually has done bad, like even worse stuff than the psychological warfare. Yeah, I'm really not sure. I don't know if Robl has some more info that he didn't actually say.
Well, it's such a strong statement to make. So I mean, he's letting it fly, right? So you would think, like, normally my experience with people like Robl, like basically just like respected high stakes guys, is normally when they take a strong stance on social media, they're not going to say why they know or have like their sources or blow their people up, but they like kind of know something behind the scenes. Normally, I'm not saying that is the case here for sure, but that's at least been my experience with people.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a chance that Robl knows some more stuff, and it is kind of dicey when you're saying something that a possibly unfounded accusation or something that you can't necessarily prove. It does get dicey, and that's one of the reasons that I phrased my thread in the way of like, I do think what he's doing is way out of line and that he should be banned. But let's focus on something that we have 100% proof of and ban him because of that instead of maybe speculating on whether or not he's cheating.
What do you think about how the floor handled the situation? I mean, they said that you shouldn't be standing up and looking over people's cards and stuff, which is good. They should have done that. But could they have been a little more aggressive in the way that they handled the situation?
Yeah, I mean, like the way he like fights the floors when it's like he has to pay a time bank or like something like that is like they just need to immediately penalize him. Like I've seen him like at Foxton's 250K win last year, like fighting for a time bank, and like every single time he loses the time bank, but we lose like 3 minutes of play every single time, and it's like, it's a delay of game. Like it is one of the things in the rules that you're not allowed to do, and it would be nice if he was more heavily penalized, and I firmly believe that he should be.
I think with that, it's tough with the dealers, right? Because World Series of Poker usually has a lot of dealers, and they're not all the most shot clock trained. I mean, look, like we had some great dealers at my tables, but we definitely had some people that didn't know how to use a shot clock in my heads up tournament. I would actually say most dealers did not know how to use them across that tournament. There were some that did, but they kind of throw some of the dealers in there, and the dealers they're not going to want to like fight back with people, like that. I don't know. I think that there's a weird dynamic with that.
Yeah, I mean, Martin just kind of like runs him over. He's like, no, I didn't use it. And they're like, well, shoot, I don't want to fight this guy who put up 250K. And it's like, well, I understand that. But me, Dan Smith, and Alex Kulev are all sitting there saying like, yes, you're over. You owe it. And the dealer's like, yeah, he's over. And then like Martin fights for 5 minutes about it. And it's like, can we pause the clock? Like, this is just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But,
All right, man. Any last notes here for the public on the situation or things that should happen moving forward? Things that you think should happen moving forward?
yeah, I mean, I think that like the poker community or like, you know, the TDs for WSOP and like any other stops that he plays need to make serious considerations for permanently banning him and not allowing this in the high roller community. And like, you know, even if it's just the gaining of the unfair advantage, I also think that it's about how unpleasant he makes the playing experience for the recreational players and others. It's like, you know, there's people that aren't going to play this tournament that we want in this 250K because of his antics. And, you know, I don't think one person should ruin such a incredible, prestigious event for everyone.
Agree with that. Is there maybe some way they could just have, hey, like, look, like, if you act like this in the future, we're going to DQ you, and then give him another shot at this? Or do you think we've just gone past that point?
I mean, I don't even know if he'd want to play in the field. Like, he'd be massively minus EV if he wasn't allowed his antics. Like, he's not very good at poker. But like, if no one is capable of bluffing you, or everyone's afraid to bluff you, like, you're gonna have a lot of EV. So,
do you remember? Did you ever play with him online back in the day? By the way, his name was Gomir online.
I don't think I did, but I
from what
saw
I've seen
Jason
people.
Moe's tweet about that today, I think.
Yeah, so I actually played a chunk with Gomir, and because I searched my email from way back in the day, Gomir, to see if there's anything in there, and I found the email when I got cheated by that other guy. I was playing Gomir on the other table, so like I'm two table, like I got Gomir on the side, and I got a guy cheating me on the other table. Anyway, he wasn't cheating me, but like I just thought it was funny to like another scandal that I end up just like looking back through that when I'm going through my hands.
Yeah.
But games definitely ran around him, and he played really high stakes back then, and he was definitely the reason why games ran. So not too surprising. I mean, he doesn't seem like a technical expertise kind of strategy.
No, I saw like a 4-bet with like the queen 6-0 in a spot where like, I mean, Alex was 3-betting me every single time, and like he 4-bet the queen 6-0, and like in hindsight it makes sense. It's like, okay, well now people like, it's even, I'm sure in his like demented brain, like he's sitting there thinking like, oh, if I get this through and I show it, like everyone's gonna think I'm cheating and they'll be afraid to bluff me. And like, think about like, all of a sudden your 4-bet becomes incredibly plus EV.
Well, but then how light are they 3-betting you, right? Do you 3-bet the guy you think is cheating? Very light? Maybe not.
I mean, he was showing down like just like so many, like, I don't know, 70% of hands from every position at this point, and like Alex 3-bet him like 4 hands in a row. So
you gotta take a stand. I get it.
Yeah, that was the stand he chose to take, the queen 6-0.
I mean, I guess if you're gonna take a stand, why not this one?
Yeah, I mean, you had the 6, so you got the queen. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, 2 cards. That sounds like a hand. All right, man. I'm gonna let you get back to your online event. Thank you for stopping by and giving us your perspective.
My pleasure. Happy that you're covering this.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Bye,
Good luck
everyone.
this summer. Peace.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's going to be a wrap here for us. I hope you enjoyed this. We mainly just tuned into people milling around Las Vegas. I don't know. We saw Dan Smith at the bank. We saw Chris Brewer taking a drive. We got Chance on his patio. I mean, looks like a nice sunny day in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm glad I could provide you some coverage. I thought it was really interesting. Some of the guys we had on, especially I think Tom Wheaton's perspective as a card manufacturer. Definitely got some interesting stuff there. I do want to kind of reiterate sort of like my final point / takeaway from this whole thing, which is I don't know what happened, and I don't think anyone really does for sure know what happened unless, they're either Martin or they have the footage behind the scenes or whatever. But, we have to take these things incredibly seriously. And I do think the most likely thing to me at this point is that he was not cheating, but using it as sort of like a shroud of mystery to create ambiguity and confusion and scare his opponents, which I still think is over the line. I wouldn't totally rule out either just outright cheating or the fact that he's just a really weird dude that he just has his tics or the way he holds himself. I'm not going to rule those out. They seem less likely to me. I'm just trying to do my best to provide some good insight and coverage and opinions from around the community, because I'm honestly kind of torn on this one, guys. And I just want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence with this content. I put a lot of work into my video today and talk with a lot of people behind the scenes to make sure I gave a fair representation of the facts. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it from me. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this little conversation with lots of different people. about the alleged cheating. I will be back at some point soon in the near future with some more content for you. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. But guys, by the way, you've been subscribing lately, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you. But if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, show me some love, and I will see you guys again soon. That's going to be a wrap. Peace.